the addendum's gonna be first. Yeah, like you said, that'll clear it up.
Okay, let's bring this meeting to order of the Amador County Board of Supervisors. We were in closed session. 1A, nothing to report. 2A, direction was given to staff. 3A, confidential minutes were approved. Unanimous vote. And so we will go on to the Pledge of Allegiance, if you mind standing. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we go into the public matters not on the agenda, I'd like to take a moment of silence for all the shootings that have happened in California, and please bow your heads. Thank you. Okay. Public matters not on the agenda, discussion items only, no action will be taken. Any person may address the board at this time upon any subject within the jurisdiction of Amador County Board of Supervisors. However, any matter that requires action may be referred to staff and/or committee for a report, recommendation for possible action at a subsequent board meeting. Please note there's a 3-minute limit. First off, I would like to report out and thank CHP for, during our storms, they were able to deliver meals to seniors when the volunteer group could not get back into some of the homes because of flooding and, and all the problems that were going along our roads. And CHP hand-delivered these meals, and so it was very much appreciated from the senior center. Anybody like to come forward? Morning.
Morning.
Please state your name.
Cam Merzlock from Jackson.
Okay.
These recent storms really hit this county hard. Some friends of mine and myself have decided to put together a fundraiser called Community Rising Above the Flood. It's going to take place March 4th, Saturday, at the Highway House Banquet Room. My friends, the Double Take Band, have agreed to play for free and have already actually bought 20 tickets. So a big shout out to them. Frank Mazzano is going to run the no-host bar. I'm going to look for wine case donations. The wine that we pour, that we get donated, all of the money goes to the Community Foundation. If Frank has to pour the wine, we're going to have to cover the cost of his wine. We're looking for raffle prizes. We've all got those people that we can ask and they're going to say yes, and that's how I got this started. So if people ask how they can help, if you have somebody that you have where you think they'll join in and help us out, then maybe you could ask them if they would be interested in helping. There's 2 other events that same day that are well attended, that are annual events. So getting people to the event is gonna be my hurdle. But we just put the ticket line up online on Eventbrite. All of this is on Facebook, and we sold 22 tickets before we knew it. So, and there will be tickets at the door. We're just looking to try to raise some money. The people that give to this are gonna feel good about it, and regardless of the amount, the people that are the recipients are gonna feel good. I'll be speaking with Jackson Rotary later tonight, and I've been gonna make my rounds all over the county, and any type of support that we could get would be amazing. If you can't make the event, we're telling everybody you can still donate online, the AmadorCommunityFoundation.org, and that is a tax deductible donation.
If you could, Cam, it'd be nice, you send us an email, just.
I can do that.
Some information.
Absolutely.
Pass it on.
Thanks, Brian. Any other questions?
Thank you, Cam. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
You then.
Anybody else?
Yeah, recently a long-time member of Search and Rescue passed away, Greg Bixby, and I'd like to have a moment of silence, when the public's done commenting.
Okay.
Good morning.
Morning.
Sorry.
We're still having our moment of silence?
No, she,
Okay, after, okay. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't realize we were finished with that. My name is Judy Jebian. I live at 557 Clinton Road. 50 years ago, Jackson Creek townhomes were permitted on a known floodplain by the city of Jackson without requiring a protective barrier along the south fork of the Jackson Creek to prevent potential floodwaters from damaging our properties. We have just experienced the 100-year flood. 15 homes and our common properties have sustained substantial damage. Our homeowners association cannot remedy this problem by itself. We need engineering for a permanent floodwater solution, and we need Public Works to intervene with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife so that a permanent floodwater solution can be permitted and funded. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, gentlemen. Just a quick question. Would you rather us hold our comments to, on the regular agenda 4A, which is discussion update on the possible action relative to continuing efforts for this flood? Or would you rather us wait till that point?
Yeah, I'd rather you wait until that agenda item.
Great, just wanted clarification.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to get approval from the agenda, but adding addendum,
Moment of silence, please.
oh, I'm sorry, I apologize. Yes.
Oh, thank you.
Any Zoomers? Okay. Approval of agenda with adding addendum 1A to the very beginning of our regular agenda.
Move to approve.
Okay.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. 5-0. Approval of items on the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I want to say that was, Frank was first, I heard.
Yeah.
Neto second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Again, 5-0. Regular agenda item. Probation Department presentation and adoption of a resolution honoring Penny Banks upon her retirement from Amador County. I'd like to read the resolution first, and then we'll vote on it, and then read it. You guys will talk, and then we will vote on it. Okay. Resolution honoring Penny Banks upon her retirement from the County of Amador, whereas Penny Sue Banks was born on April 10th, I'm not going to go there, to Stephen and Carolyn Lilly in Richard, California. It's not nice to say ages. Whereas Penny lived in Jackson, California until the age of 19. She graduated from Argonaut High School, attended Sacramento City College. She returned to school in 2005 and earned her Bachelor's of Science degree in social work. Whereas Penny has been married to her best friend, Randall Banks, for going on 12 years. And whereas Penny is the proud stepmother of sons Dallas and Brandon Banks, both of whom were born in Santa Cruz County, California. Dallas and Brandon graduated from high school in 2019 and 2020, respectively. Dallas and Brandon currently work full-time jobs and have plans to accompany their father and stepmother to Lufkin, Texas. Whereas Penny loves spending time with her family and friends, camping, traveling, needle felting, I had to look that one up, and glasswork. And whereas Penny began her employment with Amador County Probation Department in 1994 on an on-call transport officer, she promoted to part-time truancy officer and probation aide in 1998. She was promoted to full-time in 1999 with Amador County Probation Department as a probation aide. Therefore, be it resolved by the Board of Supervisors of the County of Amador, State of California, that said board does hereby adopt this resolution commending Penny Banks for her many years of service to the people in County of Amador. The foregone resolution will be duly passed. You have something to say?
I'm Mark Benini. I'm the Chief Probation Officer, and I just wanted to take a moment, although you did an excellent job with reading her resolution, just introducing her quickly, just so everyone on the board and then anyone in the chambers or online had an idea of what Penny means to the department. Penny's one of the last two active employees of the probation department hired by then Chief Probation Officer Gary Davis. I'm the other one. So through attrition over the years, we've retired quite a few employees, but we're the remaining two that Gary Davis had hired. After her 25-ish years of employment, and I know the math doesn't quite add up, but there were some brief periods of time where Penny served in some different roles and actually left the department for a brief period of time and did come back. But those periods of time and the 25 years total, she was a call-in employee. When I started, she was a call-in transport officer. She was a part-time employee and eventually became a full-time employee, as you read in her resolution. But again, it's time for her to retire and move on. I and some of us at the probation department, and many of our department employees are in the back there, remember when Penny Banks was just Penny Lily. So we've been around for a little while. She started out as a call-in transport officer, and I can remember calling her when I was a newly hired probation officer in the middle of the night to transport juveniles to detention facilities all over the state. You know, we don't have a juvenile hall here in our county, so she would be the one to come out at 0:30, would take that juvenile to wherever the juvenile needed to go and come back while the on-call probation officer would stay in the county in the event that we had another juvenile come into custody. But she always responded, never complained, and you know, did essentially what we needed her to do. And that goes back as far as I can recall. Penny, if I had to describe her, she's really the utility player for the department. Even though her title is probation aide, that really equals a transport officer, a work crew supervisor, work program coordinator. She picks up and drops off deliveries. She's the electronic monitoring equipment cleaner for the department. She serves sometimes as a secretary. She does data entry. She does filing, and I could go on, but those are just a few of the things. Again, everyone needs that utility player within their department, and Penny has served that role. So from me and the department as a whole, we will miss her, but we wish her all the best in retirement.
Thank you. Okay, do I have a motion from the board?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Only thing I'd like to add on to that is you go to Texas. My time in Texas, stay away from the fire ants. That's my,
Yeah, and the wasps.
that's my whole thing.
Have you seen the wasps?
Yes, I have. But they're at least warning you.
Yeah.
The fire ants don't warn you. You can be sitting on the ground and they say hello.
Yeah, we saw them. Yeah, we've already got one tree infested. We're gonna have to take care of.
Well, I'd say I wish you well down there.
Thank
A lot of my friends are leaving California.
Thank you, board members, appreciate it.
Okay, our next item is update, discussion, and possible action relative to the continuing efforts of the recent winter storms in Amador County. Jeff, you gonna come forward, or? Well, at least start off.
Jeff Bellotti, Sergeant at the Sheriff's Office and OES Coordinator. Thank you guys for having me here today to be able to speak on this. I'd also like to thank John Casillas from Cal OES. He's been with me every part of the way in response to the response by the county, and he'll be with me through recovery. We're gonna be working on that as soon as I leave here today. Just kind of wanted to give you guys an update on what OES has been doing for the storm, and give you some of those facts from A to Z since this started on New Year's Eve for us. The Amador County Sheriff's Office of Emergency Services' primary responsibility is to coordinate the county government's response to disasters and other large-scale emergencies. After the response and the threat has been removed, it's time to move back to normal, or at least as close to normal as possible, and ensure the functions of county government are back in place as quickly as possible. OES is unable to provide direct disaster assistance, including financial assistance to the residents of Amador County. However, we can coordinate with the state and federal agencies when appropriate for support and provide that information to the public, which is what we will do here today and throughout the recovery process. On New Year's Eve, 12/31/2022, about 1000 hours, we we activated the Emergency Operations Center inside the sheriff's office. There were some evacuations conducted in the city of Jackson, however, they did not request a code red alert. We assisted El Dorado County OES that day with evacuations in the Gold Beach area, and they were able to come to our county because they could not flee northbound. We set up a temporary evacuation point at the Italian picnic grounds, which we then transitioned into an overnight shelter. And the Amador County sandbag location up at the airport was up and running at that time. The next day, about 11:30 hours, the overnight shelter was closed due to the fact we had no guests remaining, and the 2 overnight guests that did come had returned home, one to El Dorado County and one to the city of Jackson. There were also no evacuation orders or warnings in the county at that time. Later that day, a proclamation of a local emergency was completed and signed by the sheriff and later ratified by the Board of Supervisors. We have requested both state and federal assistance, both of which have not been decided upon yet. Since then, the governor has proclaimed a state of emergency, and the cities of Jackson, Sutter Creek, Ione, Plymouth have all proclaimed their own local emergencies. Starting on January 24th through today, I'll give you some stats of what we've been doing. We started with twice daily sit-stat reports, updating our planning and intelligence. We also provided this information to Cal OES on a daily basis to update their reporting. We worked with our budget analyst here at the county to create a winter storm expenditure line. It's going to help us track storm-related purchases for recovery. We've been in daily communication with PG&E regarding outage numbers in those affected areas. Within days of the storm, we completed initial damage estimates for the county, city government, as well as special districts, and we've updated those frequently. Some of the current IDE numbers for the county as of today, which I've just learned that they're probably going to be going up, which we expected. For county, city, and special districts right now, we are reporting $3,229,297,000. And like I said, it's going to go up, and we can update this daily. We've also assisted Sacramento County OES in obtaining the fairgrounds for use as a potential animal shelter due to some evacuations in their county. We've communicated each morning with the Amador County Unified School District Superintendent in regards to whether or not we should open the schools due to road closures, power outages, and other safety concerns. We've completed 10 resource requests with the assistance of John and Cal OES to assist the county and city public works with their response efforts. These mission tasks throughout the state provided Amador County with over 100 barricades, 100 flooded signs, 24 California Conservation Corps workers, 3 pallets of cold mix asphalt patch, 25,000 sandbags, 500 tons of sand, a traffic control crew, and currently we still have a 10-man CAL FIRE crew, and we're working on a large debris removal crew for the city of Jackson, as well as 5 different types of road repair materials for the city of Jackson. On top of all that, we coordinated lodging and 3 meals a day for all of the workers that have been in town. And I'd like to say thank you to Mel's and Denny's for helping us provide those meals to those guys. We've also distributed all the ICS 214 activity logs to the agencies working on the winter storms and explained those to them. We obtained 250 PG&E go bags that were distributed to our deputies, as well as the cities, the school district, and the Red Cross to provide to those affected by the winter storm. We opened a second overnight shelter at the Evelyn Bishop Hall in Ione, as well as an animal shelter at Animal Control. In total, we had about 2 overnight guests at the human shelter each night, and we had no animals. That was open from January 12th through the 17th. We've created an online and printable residential and business damage report forms that are located on the OES webpage. To date, as of this morning, prior to coming to the meeting, I've received 34 residential damage forms and 6 business damage forms. The total estimated damage and loss for businesses totals $348,500. And for the residential damage, it totals $523,380. Last Saturday, we coordinated a cleanup kit giveaway with the Red Cross at St. Catherine Drexel Church that took place Saturday. At this time, we're currently working with Cal OES to complete our preliminary damage assessments based off the IDEs we submitted. This is scheduled to take place later this week and into next week. We have not been added to the federal major disaster declaration. Only 7 counties out of the 58 in California have been, but more could be added in the future. We've been in contact with the Small Business Administration regarding contiguous county status, which means for our small business owners, right now, they can only apply for revenue lost, not damage to their business. We've created a resource handout for homeowners, landlords, renters, and business owners. We've got some located in the back here that will be updated as we move through this damage assessment and hopefully get open up to more funding. And lastly, right now, I'm working with the Red Cross and other local agencies to set up a disaster assistance day. One of these weekends, we're shooting for this weekend for those affected by the winter storm. And that's my update. Thank you.
Before you leave, thank you for the report, very comprehensive, but you said we have not been approved for FEMA designation yet?
No, the damage assessments, the state and FEMA are coming out, hopefully by the end of this week and into next week, to do those damage assessments.
Yeah, the sheriff sent a message that we had met the threshold dollar-wise.
Well, the dollars have been met, but they have to come out and do physical inspections.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Also, I'd like to thank you for the work you've done. You've been very on it and worked real hard and did a good job, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, to add on to that is, when you had John Hopkins, and he's appreciating you, and that's a high threshold to cover. And so that is, when he is truly thanking you for everything you've done to assist the county, that is an awesome thing.
I appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah, one question or comment is, a number of folks who got flooded out of the apartments in Jackson contacted me, and some of them didn't have a place to go. They couldn't afford an apartment, or a hotel room. Is there something we can do in the future when something like this happens? Admittedly, it was an extreme event, and it was only going to be maybe 3 to 5 days that they were going to be without a place to stay, and they were in, it was low-income housing or, affordable housing, I'm sorry. And it just seems like, there's maybe local charity or something could have, provided vouchers or something like that.
That's definitely a possibility. I would recommend anybody that's affected by the storms or fires here in the future to show up to the shelters. That's the biggest thing. They can get assistance there from the Red Cross. The Red Cross will also come out and do damage assessments themselves. I've been providing them with addresses of the affected people.
Are you aware of any of these folks coming to the shelters?
We had very limited numbers. Both times we opened them, we had 2 to 3 people show up and only a couple overnight guests.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else would like to come up and talk about this?
Thank you. Good morning again. Virginia Manor, President of the Jackson Creek Homeowners Association. First, I'd like to thank you. Supervisor Crew has been sending me documents that we've been regularly passing along to our homeowners, and we, in fact, are continuing to complete and help our residents complete the damage reports. And we're working today on our business one, which has been very difficult with the property loss and trying to figure it all out, to submit it to be accurate and true. I am concerned because, as I said at the Jackson City Council meeting last night, there are resources that are available, and we haven't seen anyone out to say, what can we do, or how can we assist you in that matter, why we have crews here. Our Gabion retaining system is very unstable, and we still have a rainy season ahead. Many, mine in particular, I would say, but others are at great threat. And the damage to the interiors, and also like the Martin Luther King Day event, 3 to 4 inches went from the front of our units to the back in our townhomes. So the drying out process has been onerous. I mean, the expense, don't know if there's any help from PG&E on any of this, but many of us have had 4 and 5 different fans, dehumidifiers, and heaters. some without power, many without power still in our places. So we'd appreciate if somebody had a connection to PG&E to see if there's some break that could come to help us out with the extravagant costs that it's going to be just in that realm alone. As I explained before, of the 15, there are approximately 11 or 12 who have no flood insurance. And our Jackson Creek Homeowners Association has no flood insurance. I was told by Bo Gilman that the cost is prohibitive to us because the actual flood insurance would be about 3 times the cost of our policy, which doubled last year because they decided we were in a fire zone by aerial view, and we lost our insurance. And now we're aware that our insurance has been canceled because our carrier has decided to pull out of California. So we are now, by April 28th, to find insurance for our complex and our homeowners, and yet they have to come out and inspect our property. So any kind of help that you can assist us with, we would really like, Public Works, engineering to come out, tell us what you can do to help us, you and the city. The city has pledged to work with you and with us to see everything and anything they can do, because they have Caltrans at South Avenue that they're working with because it borders 49. We don't have anyone. So we're asking you if you would please step up the services, and Jeff, if you could come out and evaluate thank you. Evaluate the need, that why we have crews here still, that perhaps there's some services or some aid that you can come along and help us to stabilize the retaining system we have. We would very much appreciate your help and the partnership with the city to find a remedy, a permanent remedy to this, because we did everything we could, and quite frankly, now we're broke. We have to, by state standards, keep a 10% reserve, which we are now right at because we had to have some expenses as a result, including a county license for our pool, which is full of sandbags, debris, and mud. So I'm hoping that you can come along, and I'm hoping Jeff can see what resources he can bring out too. But Public Works and engineering would be wonderful. And you can contact me and Tom Hinckley, the vice president, and I would be glad to meet you. We'll even get donuts for anybody that comes, just to get some help. We would sincerely appreciate it.
I will apologize right off the bat, but we're not, as the county, going to be able to provide any assistance in that aspect as far as our own staff, because this is private property. And the reference that I go on this is up in the upcountry in 2019, we had a massive flood, and one of our roads was the Vanda High Road that was the bridge was completely washed out. Mm-hmm. We tried to get assistance in there. A supervisor many years ago had allowed Public Works to go in and put extra culverts into the same bridge area, and we were proceededly, as a county, sued for working on private property. It was also a jury award, not a jury, grand jury against the county. So this is something that we're having to fight in that aspect. Is the only reason that bridge was ever repaired was AFPD was a partial owner of the road as their fire station sits there. That was the only way we could get FEMA as a link to give assistance to replace that bridge. And since the county doesn't have a link, to assist you, we don't have any property associated in that area. As county owned, we're not going to be able to assist you directly with county staff and for that.
Well, we do pay taxes, number one. This is a disaster, number two. And the county does have responsibility up the creek, where it actually starts. If there's a block up there and all of a sudden.
It's all on private property. There is no county property running along the creek bed.
The creek itself is to be maintained by both the county and the city.
No, I disagree with you on that, but
Well,
that's
okay,
for the
our
lawyers.
attorney can talk to you
Yeah,
about it,
you know,
but-
that's something in that aspect, but, because the creek you know, what I looked up on there as much as I could off of GIS, it's all across private property. You know, the creek runs along private property. There's not a single identification specifically on the creek that the county has,
But it flows from upcountry.
yes.
And that is county property along that flow. And it has affected us over the years when there's damming further up, all of a sudden it
You
gives
have
way and we get the full rush of it.
You have the property owners above you, but not the county. The county does not,
The county is involved with the waterways.
no. We don't have a
No.
waterway.
Okay, then I guess that we're in a dispute over that.
Right.
But most importantly, we're paying taxes. We're paying property taxes.
I understand.
And we have some rights with property taxes. And that is, you know, what are we getting? If in a disaster, you have to tell us, sorry, we can't help you because you're private property? Our waterways aren't our own. We can't get in there.
It is
We
the
can't
same.
dredge. We can't do anything to help ourselves. We've tried over the years. We spent a tremendous amount of money. And actually, the whole property line has shifted. The creek used to be on St. Sava. But over the years of the silt coming down, and back 25 years ago, and again 9 years ago, coming down, has actually changed where that creek's original flow was. And this is very, very upsetting.
Understand.
Mr. Chair, can I
Go ahead.
interject? Virginia, I think your best solution for finding funds is when OES looks at the property, when FEMA comes in and does their assessment. I think that's your best opportunity to get a significant amount of money to make the improvements. I'm not going to argue the point about who's to blame on this, but when you get this massive amount of water, there's going to be damage everywhere, and people, if you want to start pointing fingers, I guess, go ahead, but the solution is OES and FEMA to try to get those funds that's coming from from tax dollars to go in to help find a solution to reinforce the levee there so this doesn't happen again.
Well, that's undetermined as whether or not we're going to even have FEMA funds
It looks
at this
like
point.
looks
And
like we've met
that's-
the threshold.
Well, that's still to be determined by their assessment.
Right.
And I understand we're not real high on the list. I understand that there's been great damage throughout the state. I also understand that, for instance, City of Jackson has had sustained heavy damage. And so it's very difficult for everybody working under these circumstances. But we've tried to come alongside all along. And now we're saying, help us to help ourselves, please. Don't leave us hanging out there. If we don't have anyone at this point, certainly our taxpaying dollars can help us. We are private property owners. That's true. But our whole subdivision is saying, we need you. We need your expertise. We need some guidance. We need some help. And that's what we're asking for. We're seniors. You know, what are we supposed to do at this point? People's budgets are stretched as it is. We can't do another assessment or raise their dues again when we're facing that with just getting new insurance. So I'm just saying, I know it's not your problem, but certainly somebody can come along. I remember, and you know, someone had told me they used to pick blackberries out there, you know, and that creek, it used to be ranchers and farmers that would dredge it out. They knew how to take care of the property. But we as taxpaying citizens can't even do that because we're being threatened with a fine. And I think we've got to remove some barriers, and I believe that certain barriers, like with fish and game, are removed in the time of a disaster. So we're just asking for you to look deep and see if there's any way of any kind that you can come alongside. And I will discuss with the attorney the water rights and, you know, the county and the city, because she's under the understanding that there is, you know, you do have responsibility in this, but please, we're asking you. And Jeff is doing a great job, and we appreciate his expertise in maybe getting someone out to take a look at it on our behalf and on the city of Jackson's behalf. So thank you for your time.
And I think if I was you, I'd be talking to your neighbors also to see if they'd be willing to help you as far as if you can get some cleanup done, whether by FEMA or whoever. I'd be reaching out to your neighbors, seeing where they're at, because that's part of your issue, is that creek needs to be cleaned out.
Right. We haven't had the fire crew there ever to clean it out. We've had to just weed whack. You're right, it needs to be dredged, and I mean, we know it needs, but it's been prohibitive, and of course, cost prohibitive. It's not like the old days.
Well.
So, thank you very much for your time.
I'm Tom Hinckley. I'm owner in the Jackson Creek
Good morning, sir.
Homeowners Association. Good morning. And also vice president on the board. And I think when Virginia came up to talk about this, we did a little research right at the beginning, trying to figure out our best sources for funding and repair. And we did determine that we have to do everything we can in filing our forms with OES and everything to meet that threshold, which is good news that we have, but we're still going to be filing a business one for our development. And I'm going to help the other owners there who can't seem to get the form done, just do it online, which is pretty quick. But one thing I think that one document we pulled up when we were trying to figure out a guideline for who has the authority to work with us or who could work with us was the Amador County Local Hazard Mitigation Plan, which was developed in 2020. And going through that plan, in the middle of the night, all of us, one section we found was the vegetation abatement for flood control section in that plan. And it asks, how in this document it says, how are we moving ahead with flood vegetation abatement in there? And it says the project is ongoing. The city has annually performed vegetation abatement for flood control. However, the city's Department of Fishing, Game and Wildlife and Streetbed Alteration Agreement expired in 2019. The city is in the process of obtaining a 12-year permit to continue to perform annual vegetation removal from the creeks and drainages. Silt removal around the culverts, bridge abatements will also be added to the permit. This project will be carried forward with this plan update. It is now titled Annual Creek Cleaning. And so I think that's where Virginia and others come from. We realized you can't be working on private property, giving us things or doing work because it's our dirt. But I think what we're seeing in that document is that the city periodically is taking sections of the creek in the city limits and doing weed abatement, like I see along Highway 49, where they had a crew in there cleaning it out. And I think that's what we're looking at, is we want that crew, which hasn't been down there in years at our section, though we try to do it ourselves, particularly during the drought when the creek was empty. That's what we're looking for, is that those efforts that are stated in this document, that you will do vegetation. If we had vegetation abatement there, that would be 40% of the problem, just cutting back all of that brush that we can't handle. And then, like I think it's right, Mr. Onetto says, is that we do need to talk to our neighbors and see what we can do, but we're also a little concerned about having the authority to get in there in the creek and do anything with our neighbors and clean stuff up and not get in trouble with Fish and Game and everybody else. That's why we're kind of stuck. We can't work, we can't go someplace we're not supposed to go, but we would like at least to get a step up with the weed eaters and 10 people for 6 hours would do a wonderful job just in certain areas behind our development, inside the creek, not on their person's property, but just this creek abatement program that's mentioned in this document. That's what we were hoping, what we thought was an option that you guys could work with us.
Well, you
Does that make
you
sense?
could kick us out of that loophole, but you could go directly to Chief Mike Blankenheim of CAL FIRE. And he is the division chief for up here, and, get a request for the camp to come down and help.
Okay, so does the city, when it states in this document, does the county normally work with the CAL FIRE and line those things up, or the individuals have to do it? Because that was
Well, the
wondering-
city is the one that does that. I am also on a water association up in the upcountry, and we've had the team come up and clear like around some of our water lines. So as long as it is a community help, they'll normally come out and assist. So that's something that they could, you'd have to, get with CAL FIRE and see what
Okay,
their part of it is.
Okay.
As your request is for community benefit, I think CAL FIRE would assist you in that aspect.
okay,
And also, one thing, you're in the city, it's not county jurisdiction.
yeah.
You're in the city limits. I mean, so you really ought to be going to the city, talking to those people. They're the ones you gotta work through. I mean, can we help in the fringes? Maybe somehow, but not, it's not a county jurisdiction deal, just isn't.
And we are also thankful, because we requested their help sometimes on our roads, because they help everywhere. They're not just specifically to Amador County.
So I can go directly to CAL FIRE or
As
from our organization?
your organization
Yeah.
to assist you in that aspect for
Okay.
community benefit.
All right.
And that's the biggest outlier. It's not to do work right around your buildings, but as the creek bed itself is
Yeah.
community benefit.
Yeah.
Can we
Okay.
get him Mike Blankenheim's contact
That'd
information?
be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. His email?
I'll send it to Virginia. I've got
Perfect.
Virginia's.
Okay, that'd be great.
Perfect. All right, thank you for your time.
The other thing you might want to do is contact, and I said this when you appeared before, contact Mayor Stacy Rhodes in Ione.
Yeah, we did that.
He
Yeah.
went through the procedures and the
He had a
protocols
crew of-
to get access to the creek, and they were allowed to go in and do a lot of clearing.
Yeah.
And they had a large community group in Ione that participated in that too.
Okay, yeah, we did follow up with that. Yeah. All right.
And Tom, I agree with Supervisor Forster that as frustrating as it is to wait for FEMA and inspections, and we might come and there's a possibility, I mean, they talk in all of these, no one ever says, we're gonna be here on the 14th at 1
Yeah.
o'clock,
Yeah.
that we're used to in regular life.
Yeah.
But to fix your problem in that bank, you're gonna need infrastructure help way
Okay.
beyond the capability of the city, the county. You're gonna need FEMA and OES, so the more work you can do helping your neighbors who can't fill out their forms, as you said.
Yeah, that's,
That may seem frustrating, but that really is probably your best answer,
yeah,
long run. I hate to say that, but
no, I agree. That's why yesterday we were at the city and felt, and didn't realize, when we heard how many people had turned in the report, it was kind of surprising that so many people hadn't in our development. We got 15 right there. So, yeah, work on that, and we'll look for that CAL FIRE information from Virginia. I'll jump on that.
It's always herding cats,
Yeah.
trying to get everybody to be on the same page.
Yeah.
And believe me, I wish right now I could just order Public Works to go over there and
Yeah.
assist you, but
This is all new to me, so I'm.
It's all
learning
very
your
frustrating.
Structure and authority too, but I feel the sincerity.
yeah, because I've gone through this, and it was the beginning of my term, my first term was the Valentine's flood in the upcountry. I mean, I had driveways eroded, gone.
Yeah,
And, it was just boulders the size of Volkswagens rolling down hills and hitting
Yeah.
people's property. So it was just an incredible, scary thought at that
Yeah.
time, but there was nothing the county specifically can do. And then again, at that time, we didn't even come close to meeting FEMA, but we were hurting in the upcountry. It was crazy.
Yeah, yeah.
And that was the unfortunate problem is that, the reason I can use part of the excuse on part of this is our dead trees up in the upcountry. Anything that'll hit a county road, we can help with. But that tree can't hit the county road, we're not allowed to, and that's by the state of California.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, this has been educational for me.
Thank you, sir.
I appreciate it.
And Mr. Chair, I did not want to think I was denigrating the work of Jeff Bellotti and the OES
No.
team and all of that. Because I think we're lucky to have them, or we'd be in a bigger jackpot than
I
we're in.
totally agree with you. The other people I also want to thank is our road crews. They have been working tirelessly since the beginning of this. Yes, sir.
Mayor is here.
Good morning, gentlemen, Chairman.
Morning.
Steve McLean, Mayor of Jackson, City of Jackson. Just want to let you know, last night at our meeting, we did authorize an emergency letter to Caltrans to address the deficiencies on South Avenue side of that creek. And if I recall from stories to me, and I'm not a newbie, I'm not a newbie like, Caltrans had changed Highway 49 in an expansion some years back, which affected that whole structure. So we're going to be trying to partner with Caltrans to address that section. In addition, we are all hands on deck to address all of the creeks, because not just Jackson Creek, that are coming into Jackson, including by the Jackson Township areas as well. So we're going to seek any funding, federal or state, to help us along with that. And we're asking the folks of City of Jackson to submit all the damages they have so we can get those numbers submitted to FEMA, as you're doing as well. We did look into Ione and Stacy Roads. Our city manager contacted Ione. We actually have the same permits and are authorized. A little bit apples and oranges, because I believe the creek down in your way, Supervisor Forrester, does go dry. We don't have that option. This is the year-round creek. Makes it a little more complicated to work on, but we can do that. So I just want to let you know where we're at with the creeks in the city of Jackson. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
I have a question. When that development, the apartments were built, it looks like that was a floodplain area. Was there any requirement that they construct a levee or anything for protection against flooding?
I don't have an answer to that. That was some time back. I would have expected that the residents would have been notified that that was a floodplain, and maybe they signed some sort of waiver or disclaimer or something. I do not know for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks.
In reference to that point,
Rephrase your name again.
Virginia Manor, they're townhomes, Jackson Creek Homeowners Association. We are in the process of going into the old books and seeing actually what happened. Been talking to the assessor's office and got all the numbers and everything, and now we're going to records, and then we're also going to the surveyors to see what notes were even taken. Unfortunately, these are almost 50 years old, and a lot of things went on that probably shouldn't have, and the developer went under and someone else picked it up, and it was a process. And you may remember Supervisor Crew. So it's an unfortunate situation, but we are in that research. As soon as we're done today, we're going up there. And so I'm sorry if I seemed a little ticked, but it's hard as a taxpayer to hear that you can't get help. There is no room for you, especially since you're on private property and we're asking for it. It's frustrating. It's rather depressing to be living in it and see that your value's gone down. And the assessor's office is helping us with that. But we also are going out. I distributed flyers yesterday to South Avenue people that said they weren't even aware of them. So, we're trying to be good neighbors to everybody that was affected, but we just appreciate all the information in any way that you can help the process along. And the city also, they were very,
And we're still
City.
pushing, even though I'm saying that we're not helping.
I know.
We're still pushing, you know, I have meetings with the, Thursday with the SBA. We've been in contact with all our,
right.
you know, leadership above us, you know, through the state and Fed. So we're trying anything we can. It's
Right.
just, it's unfortunately a very slow process.
Well, in the SBA, you know, if you're going to get a loan, you have to have flood insurance to go along with it.
Yeah.
And that, you know, is sometimes out of reach for people. We have one resident who has $10,000 deductible. Another resident, $5,000, had to borrow the money, you know, to just make the deductible. So it's kind of tough.
Right.
And the local realtors didn't know to say, hey, you know, you could flood here. I mean,
Come on. You know, it doesn't snow up in Pioneer either.
right, you don't have big fires either, right?
So,
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that, and thank you for the help you do give us. But, you know, I will be talking to the attorney and just bring her up to date, so in her research, some of these points can be addressed too, for our clarification and for yours. So any and all assistance is appreciated, even if it's on a personal basis. Thank you.
okay, anybody else? Anybody from the board? Anybody from Zoom? Okay. We're on to 4B, Jackson Valley Irrigation District, discussion and possible action relative to the request from JVID for a loan from Water Development Fund to cover expenditures related to, from this recent storm.
Excuse me, Stephen Frederick, Jackson Valley Irrigation District's General Manager. Also the Ione Creek Committee Chairman. Since they were talking about the stuff, I do have some expertise if somebody wants to talk to me about it. I work right next to Stacy Roads on those projects, but it's city-owned property, and that's where we were really able to have the leverage to go in there and clean the creek. And the comment made about the creek being dry, that was a big help for us to be able to get in there. And the other thing was we couldn't remove any stream bed material. We had to leave it in the stream. So what we did is cleaned out the bottom of the creek, pushed it up on the bank. So, and I think if we didn't do that this year, Ione would have been in a big, big problem, specifically at the grocery store. But
Yeah.
anyway,
You can't do what you used to do. What Rick Kress said, that they used to work on a trade, that they would go in and clean the creek out, but they would also take all the material, get it for free. And now that's not allowed, unfortunately.
and you might be surprised, it seems like our relationship with the Fish and Wildlife Service, they're not called Fish and Game anymore, has been pretty good, and it has been productive. I think you do have a new mindset there, especially after this disaster. I wouldn't be surprised if people would work better with them, especially individuals and cities.
We know, Steve, I'll say this. I went to a meeting in rural counties the other day, and the common theme I heard was government regulatory agencies in the way here, in the way there, stopping this, hindering that, slowing down this. And I think people need to realize that some of our hindrances in getting done what we need to get done as a society, we put in place as a society. And what you find is people support all kinds of ridiculous, maybe not ridiculous, maybe a well-intentioned rules and regulations, and then when it hits them, they go, oh my God, what do you mean I can't go do this? And it's something society needs to start thinking about. Everything that sounds cute and fuzzy and great is not always that.
You know, my job and the relationship I have with the city of Ione, it's really funny when you ask who owns the creek. You get a million different answers. Who's responsible? You know, comments is the county's responsible upstream. There's so many laws, and I guarantee if you ask 5 different attorneys, you're gonna get 5 different opinions. And that's a big problem when you're trying to be productive. But I think what I'm gonna do is spin off of that conversation to what happened to JVID.
Sounds good.
Let's put this in perspective. You guys just saw, from my records, probably the worst storm event we've had in the last 60 years. This exceeded 1997. This exceeded 2017 when we had FEMA funding. And the records, which is debatable in my opinion because I wasn't barely alive, said that in 1980, we had a flood event of over 8,000 CFS come down the Jackson Creek. To understand what a CFS is, I'll kind of just go into storytelling mode. CFS is a basketball size of water. Now you have 8,000 of those coming down the creek in 1 second. And this storm event, I went to bed New Year's Eve night, looked at my phone about 3 o'clock in the morning, and I go, uh-oh. My lake, well, on the 30th, was at 51% full. Now, everybody's familiar with Lake Amador. That's about 16 to 20 feet below spillway. By 7:30 in the morning, I had driven out to Lake Amador, and the first drop of water was going over the spillway. Now, if you were to do the math, that's over 8,000 CFS of water that was filling up the lake. It was filling up 2 feet an hour. That's a huge amount of water. So then you take a step, and I'll kind of bring it back to the previous, my introduction. You know, how do you prepare for this? It's not, we need to trim the trees. This is a major problem. This isn't just the berry bushes overgrew the creek. This is a large, large storm event that we had on our hands. Once the reservoir filled up, about 10:30 in the morning, I calculated 3.5 feet of water going over the spillway. Now our record's 4 feet. That's 3.5 feet over a 400-foot distance of water. That's a lot of water. Chuck, do you have the photos? Okay, that might help my storytelling here.
The board has them too.
We have you.
Yeah. I think I included some more that, but anyway, what ended up happening in the first emergency that we had to deal with at JVID, and let's quickly talk about, I'm going to try to paint the picture a little more. The Jackson Creek watershed is only 56 square miles. It's basically Ridge Road, the McCalmy River, and Taboo Road. We have no snowmelt. We're a flashy rainfall only watershed. So what we experienced is only in this area of the county. Right there, that wasn't completely the 3.5 feet I was talking about. The 3.5 feet actually occurred a little bit later. But that's about 5,000 CFS of water. To put that in perspective, when East Bay Mud starts releasing 5,000 CFS of water, they start calling for floods in Lodi. That's what was going down Jackson Creek. And I will say in this photo, this is some of the debris that we had to clear off our spillway. That's only maybe 1/10 of the debris that we removed here in the last 2 weeks.
Looks like Leo.
And if anybody wants a free ice chest, I have about 20 of them, but they don't have lids. All that debris came from the Jackson, this 56 square mile watershed. You could stop there. So I'm stuck on the debris here for a second. So what we've done is we've gone in there in the last 2 weeks and we've cleared about 80% of that material out with excavators. And we had to purchase a $61,000 buoy log containment system to contain whatever leftover debris. This is something we never prepared for. So we're into that project alone, I'm guessing anywhere from $75,000 to $100,000. And that project's pretty much been done by last week. Some of the other damage that occurred from this, so I was talking about the 8,000. If we didn't have that storage in the reservoir to take that initial surge, that water would have we have an uncontrolled spillway. We can't control the water once the lake fills up. So we were lucky enough to take that initial surge, but we still saw almost 6,000 CFS go over the spillway and then go down the Jackson Creek water system. And that's where these other pictures come in. Maybe Chuck can go to the next slide. Keep going. Well, we'll jump around a little bit. So this is down in the lower end near the county line. This is a JVID-operated pump station. That's a standpipe that we have that had damage. It's currently not there. It got swept away in the next storm. So that doesn't even exist anymore. The previous slide, this one, if you see there to the right, this used to be a levee. This is about 200 yards worth of levee in the Jackson Creek that's completely gone. That has to be repaired before I supply water to customers next year on the lower end of my valley. That's about 50% of my water goes to those customers that need this levee repaired by spring.
Question on that. Could you set the levee back a little bit more maybe when you repair it?
You know, this is only one of the spots, and this is the one that I somewhat think that I have jurisdiction over. There's been other levee or banks that have been damaged on private property where that question comes, well, Steve, are you going to come and help me fix this? You know, that whole creek system just blew up basically. So either you build it bigger, you build it stronger, you build riprap. I'll show you in the next picture of how much riprap costs. You know, this is right here. What you see just in this picture, and I'll explain it a little more in a second, but the riprap under that machine and in the bank, that's over $6,000 worth of riprap. So when you start looking at a 200-yard levee that you want to riprap, the price goes up pretty quick. You can stop there. So as the flood event occurred, we thought we got away with some debris in the lake. A couple days go by, and if you recall, we dealt with about 15 days of rain. You had that initial surge on the 31st, and a few days went by, and then we had another surge. This is the damage from the second surge. I have an 18-inch concrete pipe that goes through the middle of the creek that eroded and collapsed. That pipe supplies about a quarter of my district. They're currently out of irrigation water. To give perspective, if you're in the area, this is everything south of Buena Vista. This would be the Waters Ranch, the Strom Ranch, the biomass facility, Oneto's property. So this supplies a lot of water to farmers. I have a little organic farm that wants to start irrigating their little greenhouse here in February. They're currently out of water. And I'm going to kind of include something here and thank the Board of Supervisors for helping us so much with our treated water system, because if we didn't have treated water available to these customers, we'd have about 25 people out of water with really no quick solution to repair it. You look at this picture and you say, well, why don't you just go in there and put something on it and fix it? Number one, they don't make that pipe anymore. Number two, they said we could build you couplings, but it's going to take a month to 2 months because of COVID. Number three, we believe that there's another break in the middle of the creek, and now you compound the problems with your fish and wildlife, and when's the next storm coming down to fill up the creek, and how are you going to work in there? We'll just span a pipe across the creek, plug it into each other, and we'll be done. Well, what's going to happen when it floods again in February? Because in '97, the worst storm was in February. The first storm was declared in January. The second one that got us was in February. So this isn't over. So what we've currently done is on Friday, JVID had a special board meeting. Richard was in attendance. He heard all the discussion and options. We have an ability to install quickly an 800-foot bypass line, install a valve at this location, bypass water, but it's not going to be the water needed to do heavy irrigation, but it's water to get, say, my organic farm enough water, and people back into water, because I have people with cattle and horses that need this irrigation water for water troughs, etc. And that project alone is looking to be $75,000 to $100,000. And that price is going up because you have to make the decision now. Well, do you repair the pipe that's in the ground that they don't make anymore, that when you put it in the ground in 1967, they told you had a 75-year life on it? So let's go ahead and replace it all. And then we're doing this all on the roll of the dice that FEMA's going to come in and help us. We're probably going to be stuck for a lot of these costs if we want to do upgrades, unfortunately. but it's the right thing to do if we want to stay in business. So, with that being said, JVID gave me direction at my last board meeting to come to the Board of Supervisors, and we've had this relationship before with the Water Development Fund, where I've asked for periodic loans. We currently only have one loan with the county, and that's for my treated water system, and we're trying to extend a pipeline to the south end of our district. But we've asked in the past for a $210,000 FEMA loan, which we actually didn't take advantage because we drug our feet long enough that FEMA was able to reimburse us before we were able to do the projects. For example, like that levee project, I'm not gonna be able to get to it till spring anyway, and FEMA might jump in and say, hey, here's some money before that, but for example, the debris cleanup, that's gonna be out-of-pocket expenses. I just signed the invoice for the $61,000 for buoys yesterday, or last week. So those are all expenses that have to be paid. To put this in perspective, JVID here in early January just signed a budget for about $600,000. So I'm over here with Sergeant Bellotti filling out a worksheet going, Steve, how much do you have in expenses? 400, 500. I'm about to spend just as much as what my annual budget is. So JVID asked me to come back to the Board of Supervisors and kindly ask if we could borrow from the Water Development Fund a temporary loan so we could get these costs that we weren't not expecting to incur. And I think we've had a good relationship where you could trust us that we do pay our loans back. So I included a letter. I'm hoping you got that. And if you have any questions, I think my story time's over. But it was a big event. It got us good.
The bridge loan is for 500,000?
Right now, because that's the initial assessment for what we believe the damages are. But I hired an engineering company to come out and help me assess, say, the damages or what it's going to take for this creek crossing. And my budget might have been a little slim.
Okay.
So what I'm doing is asking for the 500 right now, because that would help us get our buoys reimbursed, the contractor that removed the debris, get the pipe material purchased for this bypass line that to get these people back in water. But if we have to increase it later, I'll have to come back to you guys and ask for an increase. But right now, I can get by with a 500,000.
How much do we have in the fund currently, Chuck?
We've got about 4 million in cash right now. So, there's about 5.9 million in total assets. So about 1.9 million in outstanding loans to various entities. So 4 million we can loan out right now.
Okay.
Terms,
The last term that we had was, this kind of boilerplate. I think you guys did a 1% or a little over.
I think that's what we did, about one. Just LAIF's gone up a little bit, but I don't know, how long do you think it would take to?
It would be based on the reimbursement of the Cal OAS and FEMA funds, and as soon as we receive those, we would pay it back. I think the language in the last loans was we make a minimum payment. I think it was for a 3-year term on the loan, but we make a minimum payment regardless if the Cal OAS funds or FEMA funds are received, but if they are received sooner. And it's not, we have to spend the expenses before we can ask for the, yeah.
I was.
3-year term or basic?
I would just recommend spending it off the $210,000 loan that we had last time in 2017 and just update it with the interest rates. And I think the language was the LAIF interest, the current LAIF interest rate.
I think.
I would say this, unless it's a really big deal to you, I wouldn't have a problem with foregoing the interest. Normally, I like interest on these loans. You make the water fund just to keep it somewhat static. If it really helped you much, I'd be okay with going no interest this time, unless it's going to cause you a paperwork problem.
It does not cause a paperwork problem for me. I think that would be a huge gesture to the residents of Jackson Valley Irrigation District.
Yeah, because
You
it's
know,
something a little,
I will say,
Extraordinary.
and I don't want to be the devil's advocate or, step on my, but we have to keep that water development fund has been crucial for JVID and projects, so I want to do what we can to keep that sustainable.
Well, if I may add to that, is that, maybe if they give you any type of administrative fund with your loan or anything else, that maybe you could, per se, donate that portion of it to the water fund if it's above and beyond what you need.
I have a board member here. Ed, can I introduce you?
He doesn't mind no interest loans, I know that.
Yeah, we'll let him comment on
Saw
the
you for
interest.
a couple of bit.
I don't normally
Thank you,
advocate for this.
JVID. The only thing I want to say is that first of all, I appreciate, being able to present this, and I appreciate the fact that there is a water fund. This is one of those things where, right now, we thought we were looking pretty good as far as contingencies, but we had absolutely no idea. And when Steve talks about a large portion of the district being without water as we speak, he's not exaggerating. And I think I'd like to remind the board that when you're talking about the west end of the valley, Jackson Valley, and the west end of the county, you're talking about an economic driver. We've got ranches, we've got rock plants, we've got all kinds of commerce going on down there. And it's incumbent on us to keep everybody operating. So, with that being said, we are not exaggerating. If we may be underestimating, we will do everything that we can to secure the funding at the state and the federal level. But at this particular point, we need an injection of funds, so to speak.
Thank you. Well, can I have a motion from the
I
board?
could support a no-interest loan for this, too. It's an extraordinary circumstance.
All right, I would move then that we have
You asked
county.
for public comment first.
Oh,
Mr.
shoot.
Chair.
Sorry, correct. Any other public comment?
Probably isn't any, but.
Anybody on Zoom? Okay.
Now we're back.
Oh, I would move that we have county council pen an agreement similar to the previous emergency agreement and with a no-interest loan
Second.
authorized.
Okay,
I'd second that.
first and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that'd be 5-0.
Good luck.
Thank you.
I hope not to see you again, no.
Well, we'll do our best. Like I said, I have about 100,000 that I need. We'll work quickly to pull from.
I hope to see you again, but in better circumstances.
Yes, agreed.
Thank you, guys.
That's better.
And it was stated in the discussion, but the intent was for the 500,000 to the amount.
Do you want, you could delegate approval of that contract to the chairman and county council, and so we don't have to bring it back to get it approved.
Okay, I'll
Amend your-
include that in the motion.
I'd second that.
Okay, everybody,
Expedite it, yeah.
everybody approve that?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, 4C, Shenandoah Road improvements.
I had,
Morning.
Morning.
Rich Avila, Public Works Director. And I just want to kind of echo something Steve said. I mean, this was a really extraordinary event. And, I listened to the testimony that you've heard with the people that have the condominiums and the townhomes and such. And, really, I don't think anything could be built that would have taken that much water. I mean, maybe it would have slowed it down or maybe contained it more, but you typically don't design for that extreme of event. I mean, and in JVID, if they could, they would have, but, you know, it's just something that you just you don't sink your infrastructure, the money into that type of infrastructure, because it sits idle for so many years. And, you know, from financial standpoint, it just doesn't make sense. But so, it's a difficult thing for everyone to deal with. But in this extraordinary event, you know, you can't expect all the drainage facilities to hold all the water. You know, I deal with that with our ditches and such that are on the roadsides. Yeah, a lot of them didn't work. A lot of them were overflowing because there's just too much water. I don't, you know, it's just the way it is, and it's not an excuse or anything, but it is the truth. And so these type of events, people need to understand that this stuff's just going to happen. And, you know, and as we fight to clean up our roads and such, you know, people get frustrated because culverts get plugged and whatever, and people are talking about upstream debris coming down. It's everywhere, and, you know, Mother Nature playing its tricks on us. So it's just one of those things. So I just kind of, as I've heard things, I just kind of want to kind of put in perspective, really, that, you know, events like that are just, when they happen, there's going to be losses and damage. So.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think we're going to see more and more of these types of atmospheric rivers. That's what they're saying, so
Yeah.
it's not good.
So anyway, sorry I digress there a bit, but what I wanted to do is provide an update on our work on the Shenandoah Road improvements. The last time we met was back in September. We talked about an improvement type that the board agreed to move forward with. And so our consultant, Bennett Engineering, has been working on the plans and specifications for us. We've met with them several times, kind of go over the project as they develop their plans and specs and talk about different issues and such. So we talked about the full depth reclamation with cement added, and basically what happens there, and I think it was described last time where you pulverize the pavement and base material, and then you add cement to it, and then you activate that with moisture, and then it cures and sets up and gives you a solid base under the road, then you pave over it. And as I got outlined in your packet, I just kind of wanted to give you an idea of what that process is like. So on a given week, it's kind of like a weekly cycle. The machine comes in and pulverizes a certain stretch of road and grinds up all the pavement and the base material and such, and then do some rough grading on that first day. The second day, you add the cement to the material and final grade it. The next day, which would be like on a Wednesday, it sits and it cures. And that curing process goes into the next day somewhat, and then you can start paving over it, because now you've got this, the strength has developed in the base so that you can pave over it. And then you would be able to pave Thursday on into Friday, and by the end of that day, it's usable as a road section. So the idea with this, and the reason I explain this, is that and as it's been explained to me, this is kind of a weekly cycle where during that cycle, we'll have one lane of traffic open to the public through the area, through the work area. And it would be controlled with temporary signals. But the idea is by the end of the week, that road section that had been worked on would be completed and be usable, so that on the weekend, we'd have both lanes of traffic open to accommodate the businesses and what have you, the traffic in that area. And then the following week, we start the next section where we left off and do another chunk of road. And that process would continue we'd work on one side of the road for the length of the project, get it completed and turn around and work on the other side of side of the road for that section. So the idea is to keep one lane of traffic open during the construction timeframe of Monday through Friday. And then hopefully, you know, if things are working way, been told they should be working, that we should be able to keep the 2 lanes of traffic available on weekends. So trying to balance getting the work done, but also be able to facilitate the business out there and to try to minimize the impact of the road work on those businesses in that corridor. The rate of which we can do this is roughly 4,100 lineal feet of lane per week. And with that rate, the whole project, including the base bid, which is 3 miles, and the alternate bid, which is in the additional 3/4 of a mile, would take roughly, if you just crunch the numbers, roughly 10 weeks to complete. You know, you probably add a week or two just because stuff happens. You know, there's a couple holidays in there and what have you. So it's a full season, and we'd like to be able to begin the project during May if possible. So we're going to be kind of pushed on getting this thing bid out, but we're close to doing that. But start it in May so that we can finish by mid-August, which is, as I understand, where the grape harvesting begins, depending on the variety and how the crop is maturing during the season. Maybe a little sooner, it could be a little later, but typically what I've been told is mid-August is the time where the harvesting starts. So we want to be able to be done and out of the way so that the wineries there can be able to use the roadway without any constraints. So that's the goal for this project. Like I mentioned, we want to get started around in May, so it's imperative that we get this out to bid this next month in February. We're pretty close to finalizing the documents to do so. There's a couple things that, you know, based off the discussion today, will allow us to kind of firm up and to move forward. The cost estimate for the work, it's not a cheap project. The base bid, which is a 3-mile section, which you know, there's a map in your packet which kind of shows you the limits there. That's about a $3 million chunk of work. The alternate bid, which tacks on an additional 3/4 of a mile, is about $900,000. So the total, if we were to do the whole shoot and match, is around $3.9 million. And that estimate includes a 10% contingency, so there's a little bit of padding on there. But it's a big ticket item. To fund that, we've got some the PG&E Rule 20 proceeds that the board has allocated towards doing road improvements. Of that, I estimate around 1.7 to 1.8 million available for construction. We've used a little bit of that for our engineering services. And then we had a $200,000 funds from ACTC that was through the Coronavirus Response and Relief Supplemental Appropriations Act. So that totals about a little bit shy of $2 million. I proposed to make up the difference there which is a little over $1 million, at least for the base bid, with SB1 funds for the 23-24 fiscal year, the upcoming fiscal year for SB1 appropriations. So from my perspective, my recommendation is to, for the county to be able to fund the base bid work as it's estimated right now. If this board wants to fund the base bid plus the alternate bid work, I don't know. I'm not sure how that would happen. I mean, in the sense that I'm not sure where those funds would come from. You may have a pool that I haven't been able, that I can't appropriate or whatever. If we use about $1 million of that SB1 funds, that's about half of the allocation that we normally get on an annual basis. So if we do that, we'd be sacrificing some things that we would normally do with our SB1 program, such as dig outs, some culvert replacements, pavement marking, the center line and edge line stripings, which if we took a year off from that, that's fine. We're on a 4-year cycle, and as long as we maintain that in general, a year gap, it's not going to hurt us there. But there is, it's a matter of if to move forward with this, those type of things would have to be foregone for a year. So that's my recommendation. If the numbers come in favorable for us and say the base bid's estimated around 3 million and maybe the bids come in at 2.6, the county could then have the option of either just accepting that work and that's all we'll do and that's all we'll spend, or if you want to spend the whole, if the budget allocation of 3 million is approved or recommended, and you want to spend that remaining 400,000 and do a portion of the alternate bid work, maybe we could fund, maybe that you would say of that 3/4 mile, maybe you can do a third of a mile, whatever the numbers.
How much do we normally get from SB1?
Usually it's in the range, it varies from year to year. Last year it was like $2.1 million.
Okay.
So that's kind of where we're at with this. It's a big project. It's fairly expensive. But I guess what I would want to know is, for purposes of putting the project out to bid, is how we're going to award the project. In other words, if we're just award on the base bid, and if we have money left over, we could do part of the alternate bid or all of it, depending on the numbers. And then the budgeted amount for the project, so that is when we do an advertisement for bids, we provide an estimate of the work, so the contractor can get a feel for the size of the project that we have. And it's important for us to be able to fund whatever we put out as the estimate. In other words, you don't want to say, oh, this project's going to cost $4 million as an estimate, but you only have funds for $3 million, for example. You don't want to do that. You want to be able to fund what you estimate the project to cost. As part of this, we've we sent a couple different letters out to property owners that are along the corridor, just kind of give them an update of where we are on the project. I'm trying to keep them informed and such. I've shared that information with the Vintners Association, so if they have newsletters and such, they can put this information out as well. I'm trying to keep that communication open and not work in a vacuum, knowing that this project is high profile. It affects an area of economic interest for the county, and knowing that road work and real life just they don't mix. but sometimes you have to go through the challenges of accommodating them at the same time. So, but again, that's where we're at. We'd like to get this out on the street for bidding in a couple weeks or so. So I got to button up some fine things on the contract, one being the direction of how we will be awarding as well as the
Yeah, I guess
funding for it.
my opinion is just go with the base bid for right now and see how that goes. We can take the million from SB1, but I do think we need to keep continuing funding some of those other things. I do have a speed study that I want done too. Sorry.
Richard?
Cut you off.
We have a future agenda item on the ARPA funds. I'm looking at this, that this is an important project, and so we don't strain the SB1 funds, that we have a lot of potholes out there need to be fixed and a lot of dig outs. Can we look at, in the future agenda item, possibly taking half of that and putting it into this project? That's up to the board.
Well, I would like to maybe see that money, the $1 million, go into the water fund, because, you know, that's what it's for, and I think some of it should go into that fund. We need that fund to loan out the money.
Well, you're right. It can go to the water funds, to the water companies out there, but it can also go into infrastructure.
Well, yeah, but if we put it into the water fund itself, then it's loaned out and we do have it.
The water fund is pretty healthy.
Yeah.
Start with.
Yeah.
I'd also like to see how this gets built and what it looks like. I mean, this is kind of the Cadillac plan. I do want to see this happen, so, you know, we may have to do more of this in the future, so.
Chuck, any
this will give
thoughts
us
on
an
all
eye.
this?
I didn't finish.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Frank.
Go ahead. Okay.
Waiting on you, Frank.
I would just like to see that some of that other money go into the water fund. As far as this project, why don't we just stick with you know, that's $1 million a mile, roughly. We don't know what the bid's gonna look like. If the bid comes in lower, which I doubt, we could maybe think about closing the gap.
I think, don't we have to put it as a package when we advertise it if you want to be able to have the alternate available?
Yes, there's language that we would put into the documents that say that we award based on the base bid, but since the alternate bid would also be part of it would be bid on by the contractors, we also say that, you know, if funds are available, the county has the discretion to move forward and do some of those items that were in that alternate bid.
Yeah, because if you don't have in your bid package, you can't include it later.
Right,
Something that magnitude.
right.
I think the way you've laid it out is logical, to go with the base bid and then have that extra portion as alternate, I guess, what you call it, so.
You know, I'll say this, it is a lot of money. I've had heartburn overspend that kind of money, but I also understand that that's a pretty major road, gets a lot of heavy traffic. And you've got a pretty big economic engine for the county out there on that road. So I think it's pretty important to fix that road. I don't like putting that kind of money into it because there's a lot of other needs. I mean, whether it's District 4, 2, 3, or 1, I mean, we've all got roads that are in trouble. It's a big problem. One thing I would like to consider a little bit is, I don't know if it'd be more economical. There's a short section of Bell Road that's kind of crumbling, maybe 200 yards, quarter mile from Bell and Shenandoah. maybe if we could look at that possibly, I don't know if it'd be more cost effective to do it while they're there, say we got a 100, 200-foot section, we want to throw that in, especially if the prices come in good. So I'd like to have the base bid with alternate included. Maybe when we talk about the ARPA funds coming up, maybe that's a way to get some more money towards it. But I do agree with other board members, I don't want to break the bank on one project.
If we're gonna evaluate bids based on the base bid plus the alternate, we're gonna need to set aside enough money to cover both of those. So, how much would that be, Rich?
Right now, the estimate for the base bid plus the alternate bid is 3.9.
So we need.
That means we're 900,000 short.
We're
Yes.
1.9 million short, yeah.
But you can award the bid on just the base bid and still have the alternate option to do the work.
Correct.
You don't have to award the bid on both. You just have to pick. So if you could say, base bid, that's how we're gonna award the project, and you're gonna provide a cost on the alternate, and builder contractor A wins as the low bidder on the base bid, and then
We have
at
an
that
option.
point, we can negotiate with the prevailing bidder to do whatever portion of the alternate we can afford.
You can negotiate with them, or do they have to put that in?
On the alternate,
Oh, okay.
because they've won the bid.
We don't have to fully fund the alternate portion of it. We don't have to have that money
Correct.
You don't.
earmarked.
No.
I mean, effectively, we do have enough pots of money to cover it if we had to, if that's what the board decided. But we don't have to.
So we can cross that bridge later on the alternate.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay.
It will be an option, we just won't be evaluating the winning bid based on the alternate. It will be on just the base bid.
So the main bid would be the PG&E Rule 20 credits, the 200,000 from the CARES, and then you'd be looking the bite out of SB1, the million. You know, one thing I asked you about, Rich, and you said you talk about it today, was if we end up doing the alternate, adding that in, that area from like basically about Bell Road to Steiner, it seemed like with all the traffic they had on, all the wet weather, it seemed like it's held up pretty well. What about just doing maybe like a normal grind and overlay? Would that save some money? Would that hold up? What's the base under that road? Because I know you did borings.
Right. Carlton Allen with Bennett Engineering, I think he's zoomed in on this, and I would want him to answer that question, because he's the one who's been doing the engineering, and he can provide some insight on the thoughts on that.
I don't
Yes,
see him.
good morning.
Okay,
You may not see him, but you can hear him.
okay.
Yeah, I can,
Good morning.
good morning, how are you?
Good.
The existing road has a variable base material under it. And, you know, over, I think, the years of construction of the roadway, there were multiple phases of construction out there, so it's a variable base along the road, and it's about we talk in TI, traffic index, based on the number of heavy trucks that the road is going to see. And the existing roadway right now has a traffic index somewhere between 5.5 and 6. But the expected traffic out there now, based on projections, is somewhere around an 8 or a 9. So we're significantly having to increase the carrying capacity of the road. That's one of the reasons the road is deteriorating a bit, is it's seeing more traffic than it was originally designed for, based on development and some of the wineries that have gone in as well. So we're also looking to upgrade and provide more structural carrying capacity in the road with the FDR section.
I understand that, but I'm asking about a specific section of the road. When you did your core drills out there, when you go from like basic around Bell Road or Borhan Winery up to the intersection of Shenandoah and Steiner and Shenandoah School Road, that section of road, I think, was built at a later time. Looking at it, I'd say it has probably a whole lot better base under it. That's the question.
For that specific one, I'll have to consult the geotech report on the borings, and we can get you an answer on that, what the difference is there.
I would have thought we'd have that answer today. But okay, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, but give me a couple of minutes, I can dig into that and look at the borings from the report.
Okay.
Just another thought. Haven't we petitioned for some money for some of the wear and tear on that road because of the fire and all the log trucks?
I think they,
Did we get 86 on that? I never did hear the final.
I think Supervisor Neto had some initial meetings, but it doesn't sound like we had got any traction on that.
No, and I believe, Richard, you did a damage claim with OES, and so far it's been crickets. I know I did send some emails. The last one we got, I'd asked this lady, Amber Lane, 2 different times for their contact information for her leadership, as she called it, because when things started getting interesting, she says her leadership said to turn it over to them. And I requested their contact information. She has never been forthcoming with that information. She says she'll let them know of my concerns. And the last email, she says the PA, which I would imagine probably the project administrator, is aware of our claim, and it's been moved to the top of the pile, but that was been a few months back. So I think it is a pile, all right, but I'm not sure what kind of pile. It might stink. So I think we have to go try to put more pressure on OES because nothing's been coming out, and they could have taken that. They did a lot of damage doing the Caldor fire cleanup in Grizzly Flat to that road. I don't think this county was opposed to them using our roads because they need to clean up that situation. All we asked was put us back in good shape, and they're done, because they could have went out a different direction, used mainly state highways, and they chose to go down the county roads, which I don't think we could stop them. And they did a lot of damage to that road, so I think if it's only fair, they should make it right. So I think it was the claim is what, 900,000, Richard, I think, they put in?
Yeah, it's actually, and it was submitted with, I need different state organizations here, with Cal Recycle, because they were the ones administering the cleanup in the Caldor fire area, where they're hauling all the debris and all the downed trees out of the area. And I did kind of a quick and dirty calculation on, you know, a reduction of service life on the road, and came up with some really rough numbers, but, you know, something that kind of is in the range of $900,000, figuring, I think, a reduction of service life of 5 years, and if you had to do the whole road and it would cost this much, and you take 5 years of a 20-year improvement. And anyway, that's, you know, did some hocus pocus math, and that's what we came up with, because I figured at least it was something to go on.
what's the likelihood we will receive the reimbursement, do you think?
I don't know, because
50/50 or no?
well, since like Supervisor Neto says, we've heard crickets, and I've followed up a few times as, what's the status of this and whatever, and just really don't get any response back.
And probably, I mean, I'm not happy about the whole situation. It makes it even worse. I've been up to Grizzly Flat a few times and looked at what OES was doing up there and how they were spending money, I'd say, extravagantly. And then you have something where they've actually done damage to our roads, and they don't want to give us a damn dime, and they're up there blowing money like it's going out of style. It makes me have even less faith in government.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
Hey, Supervisor Neto, I found the report, and yeah, so between Bell and Steiner, the base is about double what it is for the rest of the road, and that is in part of the alternative. That's the alternative bid section between Bell and Steiner, and so the contractor would do a different mix design for that if we decided to, if the bid prices came in favorably, that we were going to be able to do that alternative bid section as well.
So if we had just the base bid, that area would be left alone?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, my question is, rather than doing the grind in place and add this cement and then doing a 4.5-inch overlay, I think it's what it calls for. That area that has probably a lot more substantial base, could you do just like a grind and overlay, and would that be, could you save a fair bit of money by doing that? And still have a pretty good road section in there?
It wouldn't bring it up to the TI that we were looking for the structural section loading that we were trying to get on the project. We need to add we'd have to bring the road up probably 3 or 4 inches if we weren't going to touch the base, which causes a lot of other issues with driveways and drainages and stuff like that.
Well, you do a grind and overlay, so you grind, say, 3 inches and overlay 3 inches, so you should be right back to 0.
Yeah, but that's not the issue. There is we would not be adding any carrying capacity or structural capacity to the road.
Okay.
So any of the harm effects would be negated there.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else on Zoom?
Thank you.
Bring it back to the board.
Well, I think it's a lot of money, but I think it's pretty important because that's probably one of the main economic engines in the county. I'd like to go forward with doing the base bid at about $3 million, and then also putting in the alternate. And down the road, we can see how it comes out and see how funding is, and maybe we can do the alternate, maybe we won't. But we need to have that option on the table when we bid it. And so that'd be my motion.
Along with the other points that are needed.
Yeah, the other recommendations 1 through 5.
Second.
Okay. Motion by Supervisor Neto, second by Supervisor Axe. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that's a 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for, Rich, your crews of hard work during this past month of dealing with all our storm-related. Please give my wholehearted thank you to each and one of your crew, and
From all of us, yeah.
yeah, from all of us, that we truly appreciate their work and everything they've done to keep this county driving on their roads.
Yeah, well, we appreciate that sentiment. Of course, sometimes some of those roads don't look too good after the storms, and we're working to get those things patched up. I know he's not here now, and probably it's not timely, but I'd like to give a shout out to Sergeant Bellotti. He's done a bang-up job in coordinating stuff and working with OES. He's been real good to work with, and anytime we need something, he works hard to try to get us what we need and such. And he'll probably say he's just doing his job, and I guess that's true, but I think he's doing his job really well. So.
I've warned him not to burn himself out. We need to keep him for a while.
Yeah.
So not to burn himself out and want to get out of here anytime soon.
Yeah, well, as long as we don't keep having these disasters, space him out more, he'll be around for a while.
I notice on Sutter Island Road, there's some of the safety signs that blew over because it's so saturated that they probably weren't put in the ground deep enough to begin with. So that's got to be an issue every place. But I don't know if that puts any liability on the county that some of those hazard signs are down.
I mean, like the chevrons around the curves?
Things like that, but
Okay.
just,
Yeah, we'll make sure
yeah, take a look. I know that's the way it is on Sutter Island Road, so it's got to be like that on a lot of roads.
Yeah.
Where the signs are just falling over, blown over.
One thing too, being as you're here, sorry, but
I knew I should have left.
yeah, I would say I know you've brought in some extra help, outside contractors, but I'd say bring in a little more, because we've still got a fair number of plugged culverts around the county, and we're gonna have another storm. It's just a matter of, hey, we're in wintertime, it's coming, so we got a break, we got a chance, get some more crew, another crew or two if you can. Start unplugging more culverts, and there's one up at Fiddletown Road, kind of between Fiddletown and Plymouth. It's really ugly. It's sheeting water right across that road. Quite a bit of water. And there's other areas like that where there's, it needs some help, but, that'd be good if you find some more people, because we could have a storm next week, and I don't want to have our culverts still plugged up.
Yeah.
I know it's probably hard trying to find people right now because everybody's scrambling, but
Yeah.
we need a few more.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate it. And we're going to take a quick 10-minute break, and we'll be back at 3 after to continue us for Caltrans. Thank you. Caltrans presentation of California road charge, suggested action, discussion, and possible action.
Good morning.
Morning.
Pleasure to be with you here this morning. My name is Lauren Prohoda, and I'm from the California Department of Transportation, where I head up the road charge program. And I'm joining you this morning just to share some information about not necessarily the near-term problems that you're definitely have your hands full, but something that's coming down the road at us in the long term that we're trying to look ahead and plan for. So I want to kind of give you an overview of that issue, what the state has been working on in terms of potentially addressing it, and how maybe you can be involved as we work on this. Next slide, please. So the majority of our transportation funding in the state comes from gas taxes. It's about 85%. This is state roads, local roads, transit, all the things. We've relied on the gas tax to fund this very important element of government service for over 100 years. But as we're looking into the future, we're seeing that this is not going to be sustainable long-term for a couple of reasons. One, fuel efficiency gains. Our vehicle fleet is getting more fuel efficient, which is fantastic on many levels, both for our individual pocketbooks, for environmental purposes, and all those things. But if you need less gas, then you're buying less gas, paying less gas tax. Secondly, many Californians are shifting to non-gas powered vehicles, whether electric or another alternative fuel. And obviously there are state policies in place that are continuing to support that shift long term. So we need to address that because they are not paying any fuel taxes, and so not contributing to the transportation system. Thirdly, inflation and loss of purchase power. Now, recently in 2017, the state did attempt to address this issue at the state gas tax level with the passage of SB1, with indexing the gas tax to inflation. But the federal gas tax has not been increased since 1993, and so it is also an issue at the federal level. And then finally, because of these factors, especially the increasing spread in fuel efficiency across the vehicle fleet that we have, we're seeing an increase in the unevenness of the tax burden amongst the citizens of California, increasing in fairness. And just want to illustrate that a little bit, if you could go to the next slide. What the state's really looking at to potentially address these issues is changing the mechanism for the tax collection, shifting from a per gallon tax, which we have right now, to considering a per mile fee, something we're calling a road charge. And the way the state's looking at this is it would be a replacement for the gas tax, not a new tax, but just switching out that collection mechanism. 1 per mile rate for all passenger vehicles so that everyone's paying the same to use the road.
Question on that.
Yes.
What is a passenger vehicle? What is quantified as that?
That's an excellent question, and that will need to be defined. You know, what is that breaking point between passenger vehicles and commercial vehicles? Because obviously as you get into the commercial vehicle space, you have that increasing weight issue that has significant more impact on the transportation system. But in general, think about it about the 10,000 pound line. So everything below 10,000 pounds, passenger vehicles, everything up is commercial. Now there's some special cases, but
1-ton pickups and three-quarter ton pickups would be passenger vehicles in?
Most likely.
And a motorhome?
That's one of those special cases.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and that's, you know, all these little details we have to figure out as we consider how do we switch to this new policy. Obviously, an RV is a personal use, but it has that higher weight factor, so we have to figure out how to define those unique cases.
It's also the lowest mileage travel trailers and motorhomes, and
That's a factor too. I love all the immediate questions in the weeds. That's great. I love it.
How do you handle motorcycles?
Motorcycles would be in that passenger vehicle bucket.
They don't have near as much impact, I would think, on the roads.
Well, the interesting thing about weight, the impact of weight on our transportation system, is that it's very exponential. It's not necessarily linear. So at the lower ends of the spectrum, there's really not that much difference. And that's basically under 10,000 pounds. It's when we get into the commercial vehicles, which, as you know, can go up to 80,000 and even higher, that's where we see the weight really being a factor. But again, all very good points to discuss. And again, just, you know, this is not necessarily something we're looking at to changing how existing funding is spent. We're trying to stabilize the existing revenue that goes to the state, that goes to locals, to transit and all those things, so that we aren't seeing those existing funds go down. And just again to state, with this 1 per mile rate, there's no intent here to change behavior. It's just a basic kind of utility fee type of for access for use of the road. Next slide, please. So I talked about this fairness issue that we're seeing in the existing gas tax structure. And this is just an example here of some various types of vehicles and what they're currently paying to use the transportation system. You can see on the lower end, you have very fuel-efficient vehicles, higher end, lower fuel-efficient vehicles. And there's a pretty big spread in what they're paying per month to drive the same number of miles in this example. What we've done research-wise is kind of trying to see how this spread of vehicles plays out on different types of groups within our state. So, for example, on the higher end of this slide, you have folks who tend to live in more rural areas because they tend to drive those less fuel-efficient vehicles. On the lower end, you tend to have people in urban areas because they have more access to, or just their way of life supports the shift to the lower fuel or higher fuel efficiency.
Probably true, but one thing maybe people don't think about is probably living in a city is more cost-effective and efficient on the planet and yada, yada, yada. But if people want food and they want resources, you have to have people in rural areas that live there and provide those. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, that's why a lot of times people may have pickups and vehicles like that, because they're providing what people need to eat.
Exactly. They're needed because of the way of life and the commercial issues and everything in these communities. So that's what the system is looking at today. If you move to the next slide. When I talk about the same per mile fee under a potential road charge system, this is what that looks like, bringing it into, you know, a level playing field. So again, everyone's paying the same to drive the same number of miles, no matter what kind of car they drive. Next slide, please. So basic overview of how this would work. What we envision is a system that has a state oversight agency that would oversee private third-party account managers. These could be any sort of company that is well-versed in account management, that has a lot of interaction with the public. So for example, in some of our pilots, we've paired road charge management with something like usage-based insurance or ride sharing. You could do anything that really has that account management already in place. Our next pilot, we're gonna be working with a tolling entity because they already have that function. So there's a lot of potential for the private sector to be involved in. They would handle that day-to-day transaction, providing the mileage collection device or option, calculating the road charge, providing the invoice, accepting the tax. And then all that would be sent back to the state is the number of miles and the tax due.
Could you back up a second, maybe,
Sure.
please? Or, you know, that's a pretty interesting slide there. It looks very equitable, but it's not. Because if you have people that live in the city, I understand it's based by usage, and you can have the same issue with as far as miles per gallon. A lot of pickups get a lot better fuel mileage than that, so they're going to be paying be better. But the issue is if you have vehicles in the city, say maybe the person takes BART, and they only drive their car maybe 125 miles a month. So that means they're paying $3.20 a month. And a lot of so you're saying they're all driving 1,250 miles. Well, I know a lot of vehicles around here, people are probably driving double or triple that. So that $32 number is going to be like 64 or 96.
Yeah, this is based on the average number of miles Californians drive in a year, but again, average there can be a wide range there. So you'll definitely have some people, because they're driving more, you know, the reality will be different, but it's pulling down that per mile cost. So they're still driving that double distance right now under the gas tax. So instead of $90 on that previous slide, it'd be at $180 they're actually paying right now. And then, you know, on this slide, it would come down to 64. So you're right, there's distance issues, there's lack of options to transit and other things that rural communities deal with. And that's not necessarily gonna be fixed by this one policy. They're all, you know, issues that we all are working towards. But, you know, in this particular tool that we're looking to stabilize revenue and to bring a little bit more fairness where we can into the system. But
What you
you're right,
should do is have it,
doesn't solve everything.
you should almost have it by person, by car or something. Because the thing is, it costs, if you built a brand-new road right out here, and if you had no cars on it, not one car, over time, it would still fall apart.
True.
So just having that road available to whether it's a person that drives a few miles or a lot of miles, it costs so much money to have that road there. And that's where, so if you have this system, if person's not driving many miles, they're not gonna pay much money at all. But when they decide they wanna go take a trip somewhere, that road is available for them.
But that's also true under our current system of funding.
That's true. I didn't say that was, I'm saying there's a problem there. And you're having electric vehicles, they want to subsidize them or incentivize them, so they're paying zero for quite a while.
Right. Well, and that's one of the reasons to be looking at this new mechanism is because electric vehicles are not contributing in the way that other people are.
Then that was by design. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
I think the incentive for electric vehicles is probably still cheaper to operate them than a gas-powered vehicle.
Yeah, and that should be the incentive.
And that's the incentive now, or it should
And there's
be.
also a lot of other very useful incentives in terms of federal and state tax credits, access to carpool lanes, which research has shown are very effective in terms of making that decision more than the ongoing cost.
We don't have one carpool lane in this whole county.
I was just
know.
thinking, maybe we should get one.
I know, it's in certain areas of the state, but again, that's why you have them more in urban areas where some of those advantages are. So yes, all of those issues play out. So if you go to the next slide, please.
Can you, before you go, number 2, so there is a built-in method to get a refund off of the fuel taxes that you pay?
Yeah, so.
That would require keeping receipts and everything else,
No,
right?
that would be way too burdensome, both for the public and the state. So first off, I will say that the way, you know, the vision is that the gas tax would be sunsetted. Obviously, this has to go through the state legislature. Everything would be debated, right? But again, we're looking at it as a replacement to the gas tax. Now, there would likely be a transition period because we have 34 million passenger vehicles in the state. To transition them all overnight would maybe be a little bit of a lift. So we'd probably have a transition period where we'd have to have both the gas tax and the road charge in place. And that's where that comes in, where the account manager would be able to calculate a credit as part of their billing based on the EPA rating of the vehicle. That's not 100% perfect, but it's pretty good, and it's a lot less burdensome to the taxpayer than keeping receipts, and it's a lot easier to administer. So that's the way we would handle that transition period to make sure that people were not double taxed.
The intent is there would be no more SB1, no more fuel tax in the future.
Right, that funding stream would be shifted over to a road use charge.
It's not problematic, but I'm a little skeptical because elected people in Sacramento don't like to get rid of any tax. I'm concerned about that.
If we have both, then we may have enough money to pay for our roads.
Yeah.
Again, all those policy points would have to be debated when the legislature took it up, and
This is really just a replacement for SB1, right?
not just SB1, much more than all of it.
Well, what about like the highway use tax, those taxes?
So highway use tax is a federal level, so
Okay, all right.
we can't do much about that. But
Is there there's another state gas tax,
weight
right?
fees, are you thinking?
Like heavy highway use tax?
So the heavy highway use tax, again, is a federal tax, but we do have weight fees on commercial vehicles in California.
Because we use that in our public works, but in different areas. We don't necessarily use that for pavement, but we use that to fund our staff, our road crews and things like that, which we have a huge need to clear gullies and ditches and do some of the other brushing and that kind of work around here.
Yeah, that's primarily funded by state and federal gas taxes.
Okay.
Weight fees specifically go to financing.
But even that's kind of shrinking. The revenue stream from that is.
That's, yeah, all of it, I mean, it's already happening. It's not huge yet, but the more people switch to EVs and less fuel efficient vehicles, the increasing impact we're gonna see to our state's revenue as a whole. And again, this is everything. I'm not talking just Caltrans revenue, it's county revenue, it's city revenue, it's transit revenue. So that's why the state is trying to plan ahead. This is gonna happen to the gas tax, right? It's coming, and so we're trying to plan ahead and say, what can we do instead? Now, whether the legislature decides that this is the road, but this is where the state has been researching to try and see if this could be another good option. In terms of how the taxpayer interacts with the system, so they would have a choice of how they report their mileage. This choice would range from very low-tech options to very high-tech. There are trade-offs in the choice with each one.
Can you explain low-tech?
Absolutely. So for example, you could do a third-party odometer read. So something like, imagine a smog check scenario type situation.
We don't have some smog checks in the county.
Right. I realize it wouldn't exactly be, but I'm just saying, you think
Right.
of that example of going in, having someone certified check your odometer and report your mileage for you.
And that's also a problematic in this county, because we don't have a lot of that capability here. So that's kind of a question, where that could happen.
Right. And all of those choices and options need to be built out as we would implement the system.
And a question on that. More than once over the years, I've driven a pickup that the odometer didn't work. And you go by a cop, you can go, well, I hope I'm doing about 55.
Yeah. Yeah, and each of those unique cases, you're right, has to have a solution. And so that's part of all the work that we're doing. I would say in that scenario, you're not gonna be able to utilize the odometer read. You're gonna have to choose something else just because of the nature of your vehicle. Or, you could have maybe a fallback option with the DMV or something like that.
Well,
Excellent,
we can
excellent example.
see all these scenarios, because I know, God rest his soul, my father-in-law, he disconnected his odometer because he could only use the truck for ranch. So the rest of the time, he disconnected it, and when he used it for personal time.
Yep. All the special scenarios.
Yeah,
right? But in general, we would have a range of reporting options, so we could deal with the range of vehicles that we have, the range of the unique issues that they have, but even more that the range of individuals' preferences in our society. Some people want the efficiency that high-tech in-vehicle telematics might give them with GPS tracking, and they want that and they value that. Others do not want any tracking whatsoever.
Right.
And what we feel is important is the individual should make that choice, not the government. So that's why it's gonna be important to have this range of options that people can choose for what works best in their life.
What's the time and mileage permit? Is that kind of like the all-you-can-eat option?
Right, so you could potentially buy a permit based on, okay, for the next 6 months, this is what I'm gonna do.
So
Or
you can drive as much as you want.
something like that. Or you could say, here's the permit for the next 10,000 miles, things like, those are all options that are being considered.
But if it's
and been tested.
10,000 miles, you have to measure the mileage somehow at that point.
Well, right, so you would have, basically in your permit, you'd have the starting mileage, and so if you,
So it'd be an odometer reading at that point?
so,
Thank you.
There's a lot of bumps in this road, because I know this county is also heavy in antique car people and,
Yep.
those.
yes, we will always have the 1967 Mustang with us, right? Because it's just so awesome. That has to be dealt with. You're absolutely right.
That's too old. We're talking 30s and 40s and.
Yeah, so if you've got, say you've got 5 or 6 vehicles, and there's people, I know CARB's getting rid of them, and a lot of the older vehicles. And some are really pretty good vehicles, some of the diesel vehicles. So I'm watching all the prices go up in the stores. Everything's going up. I'm thinking, boy, are people ever going to figure out it's government regulatory actions that are driving a lot of these cost increases? People say, I can't survive financially. You know, it's, well, better think about what you're supporting. I'd like to be this CAM manager. Who's that going to be?
So that would be potential third-party entities. So like I said, potentially usage-based insurance companies. I think something like Verizon could be considered. Any business that, you know, is well-versed in account management and can partner that with the mileage reporting. And the state, they would come into the state and the state would certify them and basically go through a step process of, do you meet our data security standards? So, you know, anything that you use like for mobile banking or anything like that to protect, you know, from the bad actors. And then, do you meet our privacy standards? You know, making sure that your data is.
It's gonna be a hell of a contract.
It will be thorough. Yeah, and the customer service standards will also be important to make sure that taxpayers have a responsive entity. Yeah, so, and then there'll be ongoing audits that the state would do to make sure that these entities are keeping up to par. So, but again, part of the reason that many states have considered that structure is because the general public feels more comfortable with private entities managing their information than with the government. So that's one consideration. They also can honestly do things a lot less expensively a lot of times than the government can. And they can also adapt to advances in technology better than government often can. So we want to make sure that if we're going with this system, we want it to be able to last for a long time and adapt to the technologies of the future.
Don't tell T-Mobile that.
So would they be able to use the data internally?
Well, that would get to the specifics of the privacy requirements.
Yeah, because
And
as long as they're not disclosing it, they may want to crunch it and learn from it.
Right. So, you know, California has the California Consumer Privacy Act. I think this would definitely need to be in line with that. And again, I expect that would be a big point that the legislature would debate. But we definitely want to make sure that people have control over their data. You know, if they are opting into something, you know, they can potentially, you know, use their data to their advantage instead of companies, you know, kind of collecting it behind their back. But that's also, again, at the end of the day, why we offer the different collection methods that some that basically don't have any data whatsoever, because so that people can make that choice. Okay, next slide. So I just want to get a sense of where California is fitting in the national picture. Every state has this issue. The federal government has this issue. And a lot of states are looking at a road use charge as a potential solution. It appeals, you can see there's both red states and blue states on here. Kansas and Oklahoma are starting up pilots because it appeals to a lot of people in terms of it being a user-based fee. There are 3 states, one's in yellow, that have active programs already. A number of states in green that have done pilots, and many others that are looking at this. The federal government, as part of IIJA last year, included a national road charge pilot that I hope will be starting up this year to look at it as a potential solution for the federal gas tax issues. So there's a lot of momentum around this idea, and a lot of work that we've been doing across states to make sure that we're developing things that work together in terms of interoperability as well.
What do you do with visitors, like people that go up to Washington have to go through Oregon, so are they paying any kind of gas tax?
Right. Excellent question. So, as I mentioned, we've been working with other states to think about interoperability. And kind of the concept that we've been thinking about is if you're familiar with the International Fuel Tax Agreement, this is the current model that interstate trucking uses to sort out their gas taxes as they go across the states. It's kind of a central clearinghouse model that states can kind of report, and trucking companies are required to report their mileage to, and they sort it out and get the revenue back to states. So we could do something similar with a RUC program if you chose, as the individual, one of those higher tech reporting options, you would be able to report your mileage based on the state you were in and their different ruck rates. Because maybe not a surprise, Californians would probably be on the higher end of the ruck rates. If you chose one of the non-reporting options, again, that would basically, you'd have to assume that all of your miles are being driven in California. So there's trade-offs to that. It's more of an issue on the East Coast if you think New England states and all the interstate travel they have than it is actually for us in California. But that's the way we're looking at it. Is it perfect? No, but there's trade-off in the imperfectness across states, as there is right now with the gas tax. I mean, if you think about it, anyone in their right mind fills up their tank before entering California, right? So that's a good 300 miles they're getting on California roads. They didn't pay the California gas tax. So no system is perfect. We're trying to get, as many things as we can out of this, but that's how we're approaching that interstate visitor travel. Okay, next slide, please. So I just want to give you a sense of what California has been doing in terms to studying this. We've done a couple of pilots already. Our first one was in 2017. The legislature directed us to do that through SB 1077, and that was kind of the first big pilot in the US. It was 5,000 people statewide, and just kind of tested the general feasibility of the idea, which was found to be very, very probable, very useful, very functional. But it did have some further recommendations coming out of that pilot, which we've been digging into over the last couple of years. We did our second pilot in 2021 to, again, try to test how to make that taxpayer experience really easy. That's where I talked about, we partnered the collection of a road charge with a couple of different business models to see how it could partner. So again, for example, usage-based insurance, you get your monthly insurance bill, and they're already collecting your mileage as part of their business model, so they can just add another line into the bill of, oh, and this is your road charge, and we'll send it to the state for you. You're just paying one bill that you would already be paying. So it makes it very easy for the taxpayer, which is a major goal of ours, to make sure that this isn't burdensome. We're doing one shortly here, which I'm going to dig into in a moment, that's focused on rural communities. And then next year, the legislature again in 2021 passed SB 339, which directed us to do one more pilot and gave us authority to collect actual revenue so we can test the state systems that would need to be operational. Next slide, please. So, our next pilot is launching in March. And this pilot is focused specifically on rural and tribal drivers. We want to understand how this system fits in the day-to-day of these communities, because they have unique issues. They have unique ways of life. We want to make sure that we understand how the system might impact, what we might need to mitigate, what are the opportunities, what are the problems. We want to bring the rural and tribal voice to the table as this system is being developed for the legislature to consider. It's an important voice to have. The specifics of this pilot, we are testing one of the collection options on the high-tech end. And the reason for this is we want to kind of understand if there are any benefits to rural drivers in having very precise location data involved. For example, for farmers driving on his private frontage road right next to the public highway. In one scenario, he should be charged a road charge, and the other he should not. Right now, under the gas tax, there's really no way to differentiate from that. So people who have extensive private property, there are some state processes where you can request refunds, but we don't know how much people are actually accessing that. And it can be a little bit clunky, as state systems sometimes are. So, we want to see if there are advantages in rural communities specifically engaging in these high-tech reporting options. The answer may be no. The answer may be yes. The answer may be sometimes. We don't know, but we want to engage with folks to figure that out and to understand what people's priorities are. Next slide, please. Some of the questions we want to engage with the rural community is just what are the impacts in some unique scenarios? I talked about the potential for lowering taxes because they tend to drive less fuel efficient vehicles, bringing it down from that $90 a month to $32. That potential is there. Potential to talk about, leveling out some volatility. If we think about moving diesel taxes into a road charge, we have in the state a diesel excise tax that does not change if the price of gas changes. But we also have a diesel sales tax on top of that, and that will change if the price of gas spikes like it has in the past year. And so that adds volatility to business expectations and things like that. So what are the considerations of that? Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Have that conversation. Like I said, potential to avoid charges on private property. How does it impact bulk fuel, dyed diesel, all of these things, and probably many more questions that I, of course, have not come up with because I do not know everything. So, trying to see, okay, live with this a little bit and tell us what you think. Tell us what the problems are. Tell us what the good things are. All that stuff. Next slide, please. So, like I said, this pilot is starting in March. We're recruiting right now. We would love to get help in spreading the word because we want rural voices from all over the state to be participating and giving us our feedback and helping us to shape this. So we are offering incentives for people to participate of up to $250 each for their time. Basically, they just need to sign up. We'll be using a plug-in device in this pilot that goes into your OBD2 port. And then you just drive for 6 months like you usually would and answer a couple of surveys. So
What port is that?
So the OBD2 port that's under not all vehicles, but many vehicles have, it's where if you go in to have your car serviced, they might plug in something there. It's that same thing.
It plugs into your car's computer.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's usually right. It's
So if you bring it in for servicing, do they have to unplug that thing and then plug in their monitoring device or whatever?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, and the device notifies the system anytime it's unplugged, so that's a fraud prevention element there.
Okay.
So, anyway, like I said, we're looking for people to participate. We want to share information. If there are, community groups meetings that you would like us to come to kind of engage in a community discussion about this, we are happy to show up. Again, we want the rural and tribal voices at the table as we're working on this. And we just really hope that we can get feedback about how this works. We have to do something as a state to address this gas tax issue. This is what we're looking at as potentially the best solution. Obviously, again, has to go through debate in the legislature, but this is what the state has invested its time in right now. So with that, last slide there is just my contact information. If you have any questions, any more questions, I'm happy to answer them. You're always welcome to reach out to me, but just really appreciate you taking time for the update and all of your great questions. And
You guys have got a huge hurdle here, because this, just the simple stuff. I know my own truck I drive here, it has an aftermarket steps that pop out when you open the door. Well, how I get that to happen is I plug into the OBD sensor, and that's how it knows to open the gate. So I don't have another port to plug that into.
Yeah.
So it's
well,
kind of
and that's another reason to have several different types of reporting options, Yeah.
Are you doing presentations to city councils also?
I will go anywhere anyone takes me.
I'll talk to the city in my district and see if they're interested in having you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
One thing I'd like to see them really consider too is you're looking at a mileage charge, you're looking at a fuel charge or fuel use charge. There also should be some kind of mechanism to where just having a road available has a benefit. Maybe I use 1 gallon of fuel, maybe I drive 1 mile a year, generally. But then there's that one day I take off and I drive from LA to Oregon border. Okay, so maybe I paid for just that fuel and that one trip, but that road is available to use. And that has value. And I don't think that's being considered.
I think you're correct in that the focus that we have right now is in the rate structure is usage-based. So I think what you're talking about is a little bit more on the public good side, which is a completely legitimate way to look at it, and you could look at it that way. So you're right, you could
That
balance
could
that.
actually be just a regular tax.
Almost like a license fee.
Yeah. You pay an annual $200 or whatever.
Yep, on a car. That should be a big chunk, a pretty good sized chunk of the fee mechanism, because that way there, everybody's paying to have that infrastructure in place.
It does support everything we do in our lives.
And you do pay, license fees, but I don't think any of that goes towards roads really very much, does it?
A little bit. So there's a $100 EV fee since they are not paying the gas tax.
With SB1, yeah.
That was SB1, you're right. And then there's also the transportation improvement fee, which is based on the value of the vehicle. So there's 5 categories based, on the cost of the vehicle. The rest of registration fees go to support the DMV and the CHP.
Yeah, and maybe, I think they should look at having a chunk of that go towards roads. That's a consideration.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lauren.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Anybody have any questions on Zoom? Okay.
Thank you.
We'll be in touch.
Oh, that was one question I did have right quick, Lauren. What's your smallest audience that you would prefer?
My smallest audience?
Yeah,
There's no audience too small.
okay, thank you. Okay, next item is 4E, discussion of possible action relative to expenditure of ARPA funds previously set.
We do have a comment.
Oh, Lisa?
Someone raised their hand. I don't know if it's.
Go
Hi,
ahead.
this is Rocky Raymond. Hi, this is Rocky Raymond. I have one question on this, I guess her name is Lauren, the one that's making the presentation.
Yes, go ahead.
California collects more tax and gas tax than any other state, I believe. And I don't believe it's the amount of taxes or money they're collecting is the problem. It sounds like it's more the spending. What percentage of that road tax actually makes it to the road fund, and how much actually goes to supporting unfunded benefits and retirement policies of the state and the general fund?
So gas tax revenues are protected under Article 19 of the state constitution to go only to transportation purposes. They go into the highway motor vehicle fuel account. They do not go into the general fund. So the answer would basically be nothing.
So that you're saying then on record that 100% of the tax collected for the road fees and road taxes that we pay at the gas pump are going to road repair and construction and maintenance.
They're going to transportation purposes. So a good chunk of that is road repair and maintenance, but that's not all of our transportation system. So there are other elements in there as well, but they are all transportation purposes.
So are you considering unfunded retirement programs part of the transportation funding?
No.
Okay, you're on record. Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Just adding on to that, didn't the governor take some of the SB1 money and put it into climate change type programs?
No.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Well, I'd have to understand what you were specifically talking about, because I regret I don't know every project off the top of my head in the state. But in general, these are pretty locked in under state Article 19 of the Constitution. I mean, you go through detail of that, but certainly in terms of all of our projects at Caltrans, we do have various requirements on us by state law, as everyone does, in terms of getting permits from Fish and Wildlife and all of those things, and making sure that we are doing projects in an environmentally responsible way. But that's just part of what we do.
Thank you.
Thank you. So as I went along here, we went to 4E, discussion of possible action relative to the expenditure of ARPA funds previously set aside by Board of Supervisors for water and sewer-related infrastructure. There's more to it, but I must recuse myself because I'm the chair of First Mesa Meadow Water Association, so I'm going to our vice chair.
Okay, well, thank you, Jeff. Yeah, we got the gavel. This thing's, it's a little weathered. It's been beat on a little bit. Anyway, this is item 4E. This is discussion of possible action relative to the expenditure of ARPA funds previously set aside by the Board of Supervisors. It's about $1 million for water and sewer-related infrastructure. Basically, looking for direction on how to proceed from the board.
That's correct, yes, sir.
And
I think the item pretty much laid it out as far as the questions that I had. I think there may have been some other ideas that have been tossed out that can certainly be can be vetted, but the question is, how should we proceed? How should staff proceed?
I think we should table it for the time being, because there's other things we're waiting to see what happens when this thing goes out to bid, and you know, that's all. We don't know.
And you talked, during the break we talked, you indicated that this money was allowed to all be designated because we had.
Right, because we were under $10 million in our total ARPA award, the board designated all the funds as lost revenue replacement, and as such, a lot of the requirements came off of those funds. We still are not allowed to use them for debt service, so we have to be able to demonstrate that we haven't used them for debt service. But the board had at that time also designated this million for small water projects.
Well, and where we've designated it, we can change that if we have to in the future too. But what's our timeline for reporting on the use of the money?
It's pretty much gone because we've designated it all as lost revenue.
Oh, but you said we still had to show
We still have to show that.
using it appropriately. Is the birthday,
exact
the birthday
deadline.
lady answer?
I don't know. We still have 3 years left on the overall ARPA fund expenditures.
Yeah, because we don't want to overrun that and end up being subject to repaying the money.
Well, we've designated the money as spent already, so, but the question is that final proof, I'm not sure on, so we'll play the.
We just have to prove that we're not using it for debt service.
Correct.
Stacy, you have anything? Or do you not want to say anything because it's your birthday? Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Good morning, Board. Thank you very much. So one, I think the biggest test that we will have is all those ARPA funds are subject to the single audit. And so, you know, they are looked at critically there and made sure that they are spent as they should.
Single audit is due when?
It's because of the amount of federal grant monies that we've received. We do a single audit on all of our federal programs every year, every fiscal year.
But I'm just talking about the due date for us to submit that audit and show that we've spent the money appropriately.
Well, for the single audit, it's on an annual basis, based on what we spent during, say, fiscal 21, 22, or 22, 23. I'm not sure, I don't think there's an overall, I mean, the federal government can kind of do what they want to do, but as far as I'm aware, I don't think there's an overall look by the feds that they're gonna come in and audit this information again.
I'd like to just make sure of that. I'm not doubting what you're saying, but I'd like to be 100% sure too.
Yeah, we will double check.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Well,
We've heard that there's people out there who want to ask for money, but we've never asked for a formal Never asked for a formal request from anybody, right?
Correct. We've heard from a
So
number.
we don't know whether they want $5 million worth or it's 850,000.
I think most of the people the small water systems know what we have reserved, and I've talked to a number of them and indicated probably projects in the neighborhood of $100,000 to $200,000.
Two might be stretching it.
Yeah, well, it would need to be a good, and I think I use that.
It may
phrase.
be
It needs to be a good project.
Maybe
Should we get that on paper with, see how many requests we have? I mean, start with that.
Well, yeah, sure, we can.
Yeah, see what our critical need is.
I know that there's a lot of these folks are really strapped for money, and the small water system is hard. It's expensive to run, and you don't have a lot of customers. You can spread costs too. That's why the advantage of using these funds for that would be to those entities.
So they couldn't benefit from a low to no interest loan?
Well, I'm sure they'd prefer a grant, but I think.
We all want the free money.
Right. So that's a good question. Would they still be able to put that money to use?
You know, something else that I got thinking about too is I've been in the public works for quite a while, and I know the condition of a lot of equipment up there, and you know, we've been limping along for a lot of years, and we've also got carbs starting to breathe down our necks on wanting newer equipment, and you know, like they're saying, just some of the back goes up there in the 80s, and so I was thinking I'd like to get a little chunk of it to put towards public works to help out with some of that equipment. It's like these storms we had, I think if they had a skid steer, it'd be an invaluable piece of equipment up there because they're very adaptable, mobile. I mean, we had trees down all over the place. I think a skid steer is just wonderful for moving trees, and they're a pretty handy little piece of equipment.
I think we should have a limit on the amount that goes to each entity. So there should be a cap and probably no more than one request beyond, or there's just not enough money otherwise. And as far as the committee, I would say the chair and vice chair, but since the chair is conflicted out on this, maybe the vice chair and one other member of the board to review the requests.
Yeah, he probably shouldn't be on that committee.
No, I think you're right. So I think you three are gonna have to draw straws for the one other one.
I don't care who's on it.
I'm happy to serve on
You good?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
All right with that?
then it'd be the chair, myself, so it'd be Pat Crew and myself then. They'd be in that committee. And I agree with Richard. I mean, I can see setting a limit because otherwise, I'm sure they're all gonna have needs out there, and so say, hey, what's your most pressing need? Give us one, otherwise we're gonna have a bunch of projects to wade through, so just let them figure out what they need, say, this is what we're looking for.
Well, we've already had a request from the water agency for like 55,000 for the revamp of their boardroom. Myself, I'm not sure if that's really where I'd like to see the money spent. I mean, I'd like to see it go to projects, water projects, not boardroom reconstruction.
They need to increase their capacity.
What if an entity does both water and sewer? Could they ask for one for each?
Potentially.
Yeah, not saying they'll get to,
but maybe we should grant them some and then loan them the rest. That way, you know, that money goes a lot further. $1 million is not going to go very far.
That's right. We've already got a lot of money loaned out to the water agency.
Yeah, but some of these smaller ones. Also, what about Pine Grove Community Services District and the new fire station? Do they need to enhance capacity at all?
Not
for water
preliminary meeting.
And wastewater.
Not for water, for sure. Wastewater is Still a question mark.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like maybe 2 houses worth of capacity. I don't know, just guessing. It's not a supermarket. But we should double check and make sure that that's not an issue that needs to be paid for.
And I do, what Frank said earlier, I think has some merit as far as, you know, we're looking at basically the water, sewage districts, and then we're also maybe some money for some equipment up there at the Public Works, but there's also a question of that Shenandoah Road project. There might be some other pots we could work on there. So yeah, we probably shouldn't get in a great big hurry, but maybe have to get the committee, look what's available, and go from there. Also, you know, at this time, I guess we probably have some members of the public that'd like to comment, and if you're listening to Zoom, now's your time.
Yeah, somebody's hand's raised.
Hi, this is Rocky Rayner with the River Pines Public Utility District. We have some generators that we use on our lift stations, and we're right on the river. And if we've had some problems with the age of our generators, and right now we are actually renting one of the backup generators on one of our pump stations. Because of the age, our generators put in the 1980s, and we need to replace them. But as a small district with only 215 customers, some of those funds are a little bit difficult, and that would we would like some help from some of that money that's available for exactly this purpose, for a water and sewer district. We just want to make sure that, you know, we're taking into account here. One of the problems with our lift stations, because we're right on the river, is that we're regulated by the state. And if we don't have a generator that functions on one of our lift stations and it fails, that's a $1,000 a gallon fine from the state, which would far outweigh the damage to our district and the amount of money that would have to come back to the county to borrow to help pay for those costs. It's much better for the environment and for the district if we had those funds available so it actually replace the generator that right now we have a rented generator at that one location. The other one is just as old at our other lift station. So, you know, we just want to be sure that we're in the running for some of that. And if there's any other application or information that you need, we'd be happy to provide it. Thank you.
Yeah, and I believe you've already sent a letter in to the board with kind of detailing some of the issues there and your request.
And the air district.
Yes, we did.
Some money?
And also part of that is, you know, we have our community building, which houses the water district, was paid for by the local residents. So they've got, you know, they provide that building to the county for all of the county services and COVID shots and things like that, and for AA and a lot of different uses. And so if some of that funds could be helped to make our buildings safe, like right now because of the floods, the floor inside the building has continued to deteriorate. Now the tiles are popping off the floor. I heard someone say that they don't want to use it for buildings, but our building is used for more than just AA meetings and board meetings. It's used as a warming and cooling station when the power goes out, which it happens to do quite often up here in River Pines. And so, you know, our backup generator on the building provides those the ability for us to provide that service to the community, and for the community, other community meetings that the county provides up here. And right now, it's the floor is becoming unsafe because the building flooded, underneath the building flooded during the.
Well, that, you know, Rocky, that might be something you could put before FEMA. Maybe it might be possible FEMA damage, possibly. Worth looking at.
Well,
if
yeah,
that,
the general manager is the general manager is pursuing that, but we kind of got the impression that the county is going to be taking all those funds and not necessarily distributing them out to some of the actual damage that happened. I don't know, but right now we're a little bit.
No, that
concerned
wouldn't be
even-
correct. That wouldn't be correct, Rocky.
Okay, well, that's good, because, we're a little concerned that in the past, I guess somebody has felt like, we report to the county some of the stuff that's happened, and then we never see any of the FEMA funds to help us. So, I don't know. Whatever you can do, we just really want you to consider our request, and it's definitely out of a need, and not just to help, lower our costs, because we have spent a lot of money bringing our system up to state standards, and they basically regulate what we can and can't do and where the money is spent, and we have to provide the luxury of a lot of people in the system. We only have 215 that have to pay for a system that's as good as the city of Sacramento provides their people, and so we don't have that luxury. And we also are a state-recognized severely disadvantaged community. As you know, River Pines does have it's kind of a low-income community. And it's a little bit tough to raise much more money here locally to pay for the state requirements.
Did we get a formal request from them at this time, Chuck?
Yes, we did.
With amounts and what they want to use it for?
Yes.
Was all this listed on it?
I don't remember.
I believe it was.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you, Mr. Raymond. Any other members of
Thank
the
you.
public? That's it? Okay. Well, at this time, I guess we've had some input from the board. So it seems like it'll probably be a committee with Pat and I on it. And probably have a timeline, maybe have people put applications in for us to review. And then down the road, we can probably make a decision. I'm not really sure on the time.
And $100,000 per project is what I had heard.
Maybe up
Kind
to.
of a target, yeah.
Up to, yeah.
I'd say I wouldn't make that a absolute.
Why don't we just look and see and then make that decision?
Right.
Yeah.
See how much we get, yeah. How many applications we
Well, it's always best to give a target so that somebody doesn't
No,
come.
I understand.
That's what I was gonna say. We say that's the target's 100,000, they can go over it, but that's what we're kind of looking for. There or under, and if they go over some, fine, but I don't want anybody bringing something in for $500,000 unless Amador County is gonna fall off an ocean, So,
Well, and if
a rough timeline, 100,000.
if they need it more, part of that could be from the Water Development Fund as a loan. But keep in mind the Shenandoah Road improvement too, so.
That's why I wasn't sure in that timeline. I was thinking maybe we might wanna wait till we get there before we actually start putting too much money out. And I think we'd like to see probably one per organization. We will consider two, but I'd say no more.
Well, you consider two if it's water, and one is water, one is wastewater.
Right.
I mean, why are we saying two?
Well,
Unless they're separate, water, wastewater.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't there some, I know we bought generators for Jackson, and didn't we just buy one for Sutter Creek Fire Department at the Air District level?
Yeah,
Isn't there some funds left there for the?
that's not a bad idea,
From the Air District?
especially if they have older
Yeah, from the Air
generators.
District, some of that CARB 4 money.
I can point them to the Air District offline.
Yeah. I don't know what size generator they need, but
No, that's worth considering.
But we also committed to Jackson Valley Fire Protection District, a generator. Somehow it got lost in the shuffle, and they're rebidding it right now. But it looks, looks like it's gonna be more than originally anticipated because of the time lapse.
Okay, we can still look at both,
Take
though.
that into account, but sure.
Okay, I think, you got direction?
Yes.
And bring Jeff back in.
Wake him up back there.
What's that?
Wake him up.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody heard, but it's Tacy's birthday today.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. What a great birthday present to come see all you fabulous folks today.
Right. Okay, we'll
Yeah.
get back to you on that.
Okay.
What do you want?
29 again, Tacey?
What-
29 again?
What was that?
29?
Oh, yep, I'm going with that.
That was the reason I didn't want to put the date out this morning for the young lady. Number 4F, establishment of a leased assets policy, suggested action, adoption of the county leased asset policy. Casey.
I know, we are here today to discuss with you one of our favorite topics, GASB 87. I'm just kidding. But it has had quite an impact in multiple ways on Amador County and now in terms of our HHS lease and other leases, and now in terms of how much it's impacted our financial reporting requirements. So, we are here today to request that the county establish a leased assets policy in order to help mitigate the impacts of implementing GASB 87 regarding leases. Creating a policy and establishing materiality thresholds will help reduce staff time tremendously, as we will only have to report for the current year 8 out of our 78 current leases that are subject to the requirements of GASB 87. And it would also reduce our vendor costs as they are holding our lease data and all of our contracts. So it would really, it's been suggested by my peers and government professional organizations to set a policy, set materiality thresholds so that we can lessen the impact to staff and our reporting. And most counties have created this separate policy, and they've made the threshold higher than their capital assets policy. So currently, right now, our capital assets policy is anything that's over $5,000 has to be capitalized. But in regards to these leases, looking at them, besides the HHS building and a few other leases, most of them are airport hangar leases. And we're talking, some of them are more, but $50 to $75 a month. And overall, we've deemed that they really aren't material, that we have to separate them out on the financial statements and do special reporting for them. And our auditors agree that a level of $10,000 for the leases policy would be reasonable. So this is so far how we've proceeded with the audit, because time has just moved along like crazy. And I feel comfortable, I have to tell you that even at our county auditor's annual or our fall meeting, there's a lady there from GASB who's on the GASB board and is part of making these pronouncements. And she said, if I were you, I'd use, even though setting a materiality threshold is not part of what GASB does, it's not part of their arena, which she clarified. She said that if it was her implementing this, she would use the heck out of materiality just to help. It's onerous. We do have, we actually had 110 leases to go through for our county. And we determined that 78 fall under the rules. So having a materiality threshold that's a little higher than our fixed asset threshold really takes a chunk of the burden but our external auditors are very conservative and they are in favor of this.
Could you have that materiality threshold a little higher even?
I looked at that, but I think it would only leave us with 3. And it just seemed like doubling the fixed asset threshold was probably enough. And we felt comfortable.
Okay.
It's something we can consider in the future, changing again, but this initially really helps. Do you have any questions?
How do large counties handle this? Because let's say like LA County, they have to have thousands of leases. They would do it the same way, like a 10,000 materiality threshold?
Well, likely their fixed asset threshold is already at 25 or 50,000, and so they're gonna have a much higher threshold. I didn't specifically talk to someone in LA, but that would be, their capital asset threshold is much higher.
And I was wondering on the 10,000, is that even high enough?
Yeah, I think Brian had asked that. It looks to me that it's the most reasonable for our purposes. We're not trying to avoid implementing this, but we're trying to make sure that we capture what we think is material.
Do you happen to know roughly what the leases are running that they're not gonna, they're gonna fall under the materiality amount? Those others, what, 7, I think it was? Or 8?
We had 78 leases without having a materiality threshold at all that would fall.
What are the 8, what's the lower ones? I mean, are they just,
There are a few, I think airport, is there a few hangars, because some are like 30 years. And so when you take $50 a month times 30 years, you're gonna be over $10,000.
they're not too far over 10,000 is kind of my question. They're close.
One is 11,000, one is 34,000, and one is 152,000.
Okay, so even he raised it, it wouldn't change much.
Yeah, I would maybe remove one,
Yeah, okay.
but kind of a weird amount.
That answers that.
Yeah. So it's interesting. The mechanics of this have been very difficult. I think we've always been on the front end, to be honest, in dealing with how this has impacted HHS and the county having to take over the lease payments in order for social services to be able to take this amortization that's based on these, current, fair market values and run it through the cost plan. I mean, it's been quite a process.
I think I've heard enough, so.
Sorry.
Any other questions?
Yes.
Anybody on Zoom? Okay, it's back to the board.
Well, I'd make a motion that we adopt the county leased assets policy and raising that threshold.
Second.
Okay, a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, it's 5-0.
Thank you so much. We really, really appreciate it, especially Michelle.
You can have the rest of the day off for your birthday.
Oh, okay, thank you. I wish. No, I'm fine to be here. Thank you.
Okay, last item is 4G, minutes, review and possible approval of the January 10th, 2023 Board of Supervisors meeting.
Couple things. The one, all right, was the supervisor crew. We put the reason for absence, jury duty on there. I have a couple minor corrections, but on page 4, under the motion, wouldn't it have been $1 million, the fourth line, $1 million for the 22-23 and 1 million for the 23-24, and then 1.5 for 24-25? There were 3 years involved. 2 of those years were set at 1 million.
For that social services item that we're talking.
This is for the Chabot Las Positas Community College District contract.
I think that's correct. I think it was 1, 1, and 1 1/4.
Yeah, so I think in the motion, it should include N 23-24 million for 23, 24.
I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah. And then I have a couple other minor changes. I would move approval with those changes.
Second?
Okay, Forster and Neto, vote. Go ahead. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? 5-0. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.